The crystal chandelier above Brielle Washington's head sparkled like frozen tears, and she wondered if walking out right now would make her look more pathetic than sitting here alone at a table set for two on Christmas Eve. Her fingers traced the edge of the white linen napkin on her lap, folded and refolded, then smoothed it flat again. Around her, the restaurant hummed with the sound of happiness. Couples leaned across tables, their hands intertwined. Families laughed over shared plates. Even the servers seemed to glow with holiday cheer as they glided between tables carrying trays of expensive food that Brielle knew she couldn't normally afford. But tonight wasn't normal. Tonight was the result of 3 weeks of her best friend Tasha begging, pleading, and finally guilt-tripping her into agreeing to this blind date. "You cannot spend another Christmas alone, Brie," Tasha had said, her voice firm through the phone. "It's been 5 years. 5 years of you working yourself into the ground, taking care of your mom, and refusing to let anyone in. This guy is perfect for you. Trust me." Brielle had wanted to argue. She had wanted to say that she was fine alone, that she didn't need anyone, that her heart had learned its lesson about trust. But the thought of spending another Christmas Eve in her small apartment, microwaving leftovers while her mother slept in the next room, had been too much to bear. So she'd said yes. Now she regretted it. She checked her phone again. 7:30. Her date was 30 minutes late. The server had already come by 3 times, each time with a more sympathetic smile, asking if she wanted to order a drink while she waited. Each time Brielle had said she was fine, that he was probably just caught in traffic. But she wasn't fine. Her stomach twisted with embarrassment and something deeper, something that felt like the confirmation of a fear she'd carried for years, that she wasn't worth showing up for. She reached for her purse, ready to leave her dignity in pieces on the expensive Persian rug and retreat to the safety of her lonely apartment. But then something made her look up. Across the restaurant, near the entrance, stood a man in a navy blue suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He was tall, with dark brown skin and a presence that seemed to command attention even in a room full of Chicago's elite. He was speaking to the hostess, gesturing with his hands the way people do when they're trying to explain something important. Brielle's breath caught in her throat. She knew those hands. She knew the way his shoulders moved under his jacket. She knew the shape of his profile even from across a crowded room. No, it couldn't be. Her heart began to pound so hard she could hear it over the soft jazz music playing through the restaurant speakers. Her hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles going pale. The man turned slightly, and the light from the chandelier illuminated his face. Andre Mitchell. The name slammed into her consciousness like a physical blow. Andre Mitchell, who had been her entire world once. Andre, who had shared her dreams and her bed and her tiny apartment with the broken heater. Andre, who had promised her forever and then disappeared without a trace 5 years ago, leaving nothing but unanswered calls and a broken heart. What was he doing here? Of all the restaurants in Chicago, on all the nights of the year, why was he here on Christmas Eve? Brielle's first instinct was to hide. She looked around wildly for the restroom, for an exit, for anywhere she could disappear before he saw her. She'd changed since they were together. She'd lost weight from stress and skipped meals. She'd cut her hair short and natural instead of the long relaxed style she'd worn back then. Maybe he wouldn't recognize her. Maybe she could slip out and he'd never know. But even as she thought it, she knew she was fooling herself. And worse than that, a part of her, a part she'd tried to kill over 5 long years, wanted him to see her. Wanted him to see what his leaving had done. Wanted him to feel something, anything, even if it was just regret. She watched as the hostess nodded and began to lead him through the restaurant. Brielle's muscles tensed, ready to bolt, but her body wouldn't obey. She sat frozen, watching him navigate between tables, his eyes scanning the room. Then, in a moment that felt like something from a nightmare, the hostess turned and began walking directly toward Brielle's table. No. This couldn't be happening. This had to be a coincidence. He was meeting someone else. The restaurant was full. There were dozens of tables. The hostess was just passing by on her way to seat him somewhere else. But the hostess stopped right at Brielle's table, smiled warmly, and gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Here you are, Mr. Mitchell. I apologize again for the confusion with your reservation." Andre smiled at the hostess, thanked her, and then his eyes finally dropped to the woman sitting at the table. Brielle watched his face, watched the polite smile he'd been wearing freeze and then falter. His eyes widened slightly. His lips parted as if to speak, but no words came out. For a long moment, they just stared at each other across the table, the noise of the restaurant fading into a distant hum. "Brielle?" His voice was exactly as she remembered it, deep and warm, but now it carried a note of shock that bordered on disbelief. She couldn't speak. Her throat had closed up, her tongue felt thick and useless. All she could do was nod. Andrei slowly pulled out the chair and sat down, his movements careful, as if he was afraid she might vanish if he moved too quickly. He placed his hands on the table and Brielle noticed they were shaking slightly. I don't understand, he said, his eyes never leaving her face. You're my date? The words hit her like ice water. Her date. He was her blind date. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't some cosmic joke. Tasha had set her up with Andre Mitchell and she'd had no idea. You didn't know, Brielle heard herself say, her voice sounding strange and distant. You didn't know it was me. No. Andre shook his head, running a hand over his face. I had no idea. Tasha just said, she said she had a friend, someone special, and that I should meet you. She didn't give me a name. She said it would be a nice surprise. Surprise. That was one word for it. Brielle felt something crack inside her chest, that careful wall she'd built around her heart over the past 5 years. All the anger, all the hurt, all the questions she'd forced herself to stop asking came flooding back. How have you been? Andre asked, and the question was so absurd, so inadequate for the moment, that Brielle almost laughed. How had she been? How do you answer that question when the person asking it disappeared from your life without explanation? How do you summarize 5 years of grief and confusion and slowly learning to breathe again? I've been surviving, she said finally, and she saw him flinch at the word. Before Andre could respond, their server appeared, cheerful and oblivious to the tension crackling between them like static electricity. Good evening. Can I start you both with something to drink? Brielle opened her mouth to say water, to say anything cheap and quick so she could leave, but Andre spoke first. A bottle of your best champagne, please? We're celebrating. The server beamed and hurried away. Brielle stared at Andre, confused and angry. Celebrating what exactly? Andre leaned forward, and for the first time since sitting down, she saw something other than shock in his eyes. She saw hope. Celebrating the fact that I've been looking for you for 2 years and somehow, on Christmas Eve, you just appeared at my table. That has to mean something, Brielle. That has to be fate. Looking for her? For 2 years? Brielle felt her carefully constructed walls shake, felt the questions she'd buried start clawing their way to the surface. You left me, she said, her voice breaking despite her efforts to keep it steady. You left me alone with no explanation, no goodbye, nothing. And now you want to celebrate? I know, Andre said, and there was pain in his voice that sounded real. I know, and I can explain everything. I need to explain everything. Please, Brielle. Please just stay. Just listen. I owe you that much. The server returned with the champagne, popped the cork with a festive sound that felt entirely wrong for the moment, and poured 2 glasses before disappearing again. Brielle looked at the bubbles rising in her glass, at Andre's face across the table, at the Christmas lights twinkling in the windows. She thought about her empty apartment, her sleeping mother, the 5 years of questions that had haunted her. Maybe she did deserve answers. Maybe she deserved to know why the man she'd loved had vanished like smoke. And maybe, just maybe, those answers would finally let her move on. She picked up her glass and took a sip. The champagne was sweet and cold and expensive. I'll listen, she said finally. But that doesn't mean I forgive you. Andre nodded, relief washing over his face. That's fair. That's more than fair. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of 5 years between them. You look different, Andre said softly. Beautiful but different. Your hair. I changed a lot of things after you left, Brielle said, her voice sharper than she intended. I had to. I'm sorry, Andre said, and something in the way he said it made Brielle believe he meant it. I'm so sorry, Brielle. For everything. But sorry wasn't enough. Sorry was just a word, and words were what he'd been good at before. Words and promises and dreams that had evaporated the moment things got hard. Why did you leave? The question burst out of her before she could stop it, 5 years of pain compressed into 4 words. Andre's jaw tightened. He looked down at his hands, then back up at her. It's complicated. Then uncomplicated. I will. I promise I will. But not here, not like this. There's so much you don't know, so much I need to tell you. Can we have dinner? Can we pretend, just for tonight, that we're 2 people meeting for the first time, and then I'll explain everything. I'll tell you everything you want to know. Brielle wanted to say no. She wanted to stand up, walk out, and never look back. But something kept her in her seat. Maybe it was the way he was looking at her, like she was the only person in the room. Maybe it was the desperation in his voice, so different from the confident man who'd walked in. Or maybe it was simply that she'd spent 5 years imagining this moment, and now that it was here, she couldn't bring herself to walk away from the answers she'd craved. "Fine," she said. "We'll have dinner. But after that, you tell me everything, Andre. Everything." "I will," he promised. "I swear I will." The server returned to take their order, and Brielle realized with a start that she'd never even looked at the menu. She ordered something at random, barely registering what it was, and watched Andre do the same. When they were alone again, Andre smiled, but it was a sad, broken thing. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "seeing you again is the best Christmas gift I could have asked for. Even if you hate me. Even if you never forgive me. Just seeing that you're okay, that you're here and alive and as strong as I remember. It's everything." Brielle felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back furiously. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of him. "I'm not the same person you left," she said. "Neither am I," Andre replied. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe that's how it's supposed to be." As the server brought their first course, Brielle studied the man across from her. He wore success like a second skin now. The expensive suit, the confident way he moved, the ease with which he'd ordered champagne without looking at the price. This wasn't the struggling entrepreneur she'd fallen in love with, the one who'd worked 3 jobs and still couldn't make rent. This was someone new. Someone who'd made it. And she was still the same Brielle, working too hard, trying to keep her head above water, wondering if she'd ever catch a break. The distance between where they'd started and where they'd ended up felt impossible to cross. But as they began to eat, making awkward small talk about the weather and the restaurant and anything that wasn't the elephant sitting at their table, Brielle felt something shift. Maybe it was the way Andre's eyes kept finding hers, like he couldn't quite believe she was real. Maybe it was the careful way he spoke, as if he was afraid of saying the wrong thing and making her bolt. Or maybe it was simply that after 5 years of questions and pain and learning to live without him, she finally had the chance to hear the truth. Whatever happened next, at least she would know. At least she would have that. Even if the truth destroyed her all over again. Before we continue, I have to ask you something important. Have you ever had someone walk out of your life without explanation, leaving you with nothing but questions? If this story is resonating with you, please subscribe to see how Brielle's journey unfolds. And in the comments, tell me, do you think Andre deserves a second chance, or should Brielle walk away? Your opinions matter, and I read every single comment. The first course arrived, and Brielle picked at her salad without really tasting it. Across from her, Andre seemed equally distracted, moving food around his plate more than eating it. The silence between them was heavy, filled with 5 years of unspoken words. "So," Andre said finally, setting down his fork, "Tasha never mentioned you worked with her." "I don't," Brielle said. "We've been friends since college. She works in finance now. I'm at Memorial Hospital, in administration." She saw something flicker across Andre's face. Surprise maybe. Or was it concern? "You're not painting anymore?" The question stung more than Brielle expected. She'd been an artist once, with dreams of gallery shows and exhibitions. That was before reality had taught her that dreams didn't pay bills or keep the lights on. "No," she said simply, not trusting herself to say more. Andre nodded slowly, and she could see him processing this information, comparing it to the Brielle he'd known. The Brielle who used to stay up until 3 in the morning working on a canvas, who'd seen color and beauty in everything, who'd believed that passion and talent were enough. "I'm sorry," he said. "You were so talented." "Were?" Brielle repeated. Past tense. "That's appropriate. I didn't mean it like that." "Didn't you?" Brielle set down her fork, her appetite completely gone. "You want to sit here and pretend we're strangers, Andre? Fine. Let's play that game. Tell me about yourself, Mr. Mitchell. What do you do?" She saw him wince at her tone, but he answered. "I own a tech company. We develop software for healthcare systems, making patient data more accessible and secure. We just went public last year." Public? That meant he was rich. Probably very rich, based on the suit and the champagne and the way the staff treated him like royalty. While she'd been struggling to make ends meet, working double shifts to pay for her mother's medications, he'd been building an empire. "Congratulations," she said, and she hated how bitter she sounded. "You made it. Everything you wanted." "Not everything," Andre said quietly, his eyes locked on hers. "I didn't have you." Brielle felt her breath catch. How dare he say that? How dare he sit there and pretend he'd missed her when he was the one who'd left? "You made that choice," she said, her voice tight. "You walked away." "I know." Andre leaned forward, his voice urgent. "And I've regretted it every single day since. Every morning I wake up and for a split second I forget. I reach for you and you're not there. And then I remember what I did, what I lost, and it kills me all over again. Stop, Brielle said, shaking her head. You don't get to do this. You don't get to act like you're the victim here. I'm not, Andre said quickly. I'm not the victim. You are. What I did to you was unforgivable. I know that. But I need you to understand that I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I loved you too much. That doesn't make any sense. I know. That's why I need to explain. That's why I need you to hear the whole story. Their server appeared to clear their first course and deliver the main dishes. Brielle looked down at her plate and saw some kind of fish with vegetables, artfully arranged and probably delicious, and felt her stomach turn. I'm not very hungry, she admitted. Neither am I, Andre said. Do you want to leave? Yes. Every instinct in her body screamed yes. Run away. Protect yourself. Don't let him hurt you again. But another part of her, the part that had loved him once, that had believed in forever, needed to understand. Not yet, she said. You promised me answers. I'm staying until I get them. Andre nodded. Okay. Then let me start at the beginning. Or maybe not the beginning. Maybe I should start with that last day. Do you remember? Did she remember? Brielle almost laughed. She remembered everything about that day. She'd woken up early for her shift at the diner, kissed Andre goodbye while he was still half asleep. She'd worked a double because they needed the money. She'd come home exhausted at midnight, ready to collapse into bed beside him, and found the apartment empty. At first she'd thought he was just out. Working late maybe or grabbing food. But his clothes were gone. His laptop. The picture of them she'd kept on the nightstand. Everything that marked him as part of her life had vanished, and all that remained was a space that felt too big and too empty. I remember, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I had been sick for months, Andre said, and Brielle's head snapped up. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to worry. We already had so little. You were working so hard, trying to support both of us while I worked on the startup. I couldn't add to your burden. What kind of sick? Brielle asked, fear suddenly mixing with her anger. It started with fatigue, then pain. By the time I finally went to a free clinic, they found something in my blood work. Something serious. They sent me to a specialist, and that specialist told me I needed treatment. Expensive treatment. The kind of treatment that costs more than we made in 5 years. Brielle felt the room tilt slightly. Andre had been sick. Seriously sick. And he'd never told her. What was it? She asked. They thought it was leukemia at first. Later they reclassified it as a rare blood disorder. Either way, I was looking at years of treatment, experimental drugs, the possibility of a bone marrow transplant. And we had nothing. No insurance. No savings. Nothing. You should have told me, Brielle said, tears now streaming freely down her face despite her best efforts to hold them back. You should have let me help. How? Andre asked gently. How could you have helped, Brielle? You were already working yourself to death. If I told you, you would have taken on more shifts. You would have sacrificed everything to try to save me, and it wouldn't have been enough. It was never going to be enough. So you just left? That was your solution? No. Andre shook his head. Leaving was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I got an offer. A venture capitalist who'd been interested in my software found out about my situation. He offered me a deal. He'd pay for all my medical treatment, the best doctors, the best hospitals. And he'd fund my company, give me everything I needed to make it succeed. But there were conditions. What conditions? I had to relocate immediately. To California, where his team was based. I had to dedicate myself completely to the business, no distractions, no divided attention. And I couldn't contact anyone from my previous life for 3 years. Not you, not my family, no one. He said it was necessary for focus, for success. And I was desperate. I was dying, Brielle. And I couldn't stand the thought of you watching me die. Brielle pressed her hands to her mouth, trying to process what she was hearing. Andre had left to save his own life. He'd made a deal with someone who demanded he cut all ties. He'd chosen survival over love. You still could have told me, she said, her voice breaking. You could have explained. I would have understood. Would you? Andre asked. If I had come to you and said I'm leaving you because I'm dying and some stranger is offering me a chance to live, would you have let me go? Or would you have fought? Would you have tried to find another way? Would you have tried to come with me? Brielle opened her mouth to answer and then closed it again. Because he was right. She would have fought. She would have refused to accept his decision. She would have begged him to stay, to let her help find another solution, even if there wasn't one. You took away my choice, she said finally. You decided what was best for me without asking me. I did, Andre admitted. And that was wrong. I've had 5 years to realize how wrong it was. But at the time I was scared and sick and desperate. And I convinced myself that you'd be better off without me. That you could move on, find someone else, have the life you deserved. Someone who wasn't broken and sick and poor. I didn't want someone else, Brielle said, her voice fierce. I wanted you. The real you, the honest you, even if you were sick. Especially if you were sick. That's what love means, Andre. Being there for each other when things get hard. I know that now, Andre said. I know it too well now. Because I spent 3 years in California building a business, getting treatment, and being completely alone. No friends. No family. Just work and doctors and this empty hole where you used to be. And then when the 3 years were up, when I'd fulfilled my part of the deal and I was finally healthy, the first thing I did was hire a private investigator to find you. Brielle stared at him. You hired an investigator? You'd moved, Andre explained. Your old apartment was rented to someone else. Your phone was disconnected. I went to the diner where you used to work, but they said you'd left years ago. It was like you'd disappeared. I searched for 2 years, Brielle. 2 years of following dead ends and false leads. I was starting to think I'd never find you. And then Tasha reached out to me about a business partnership. We were in a meeting and she mentioned she had a friend who was struggling. A friend who needed to get out more, who worked too hard and never took time for herself. She showed me a picture. And you recognized me. Not at first, Andre admitted. You look so different. But something about your eyes, the way you smiled in the photo even though I could see you were tired. I knew. So I asked Tasha to set up a blind date. I didn't tell her about our history because I wasn't sure you'd want to see me if you knew. I thought maybe if we just met, if I could see you face to face, I could explain. I could finally tell you the truth. Brielle sat back in her chair, her mind reeling. All these years she'd thought he'd abandoned her. She'd believed he'd gotten successful and decided she wasn't good enough anymore. She'd convinced herself that their love had meant nothing to him. But he'd been sick. He'd been dying. And he'd made an impossible choice to survive. What about now? She asked. Are you still sick? No, Andre said, and she could hear the relief in his voice. I've been in remission for 4 years. I get checked every 6 months, but the doctors say I'm as healthy as anyone. The treatment worked. I survived. And the venture capitalist? The 3-year condition. The partnership ended 2 years ago. I bought out his stake in the company. I'm completely independent now. Free to live my life however I want. And all I've wanted is to find you and explain. To apologize. To tell you that leaving you was the biggest mistake I ever made, even if I thought it was the right thing at the time. Brielle looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't lying. He'd been sick, he'd made a terrible choice, and he'd spent years regretting it. But that didn't erase the pain he'd caused. It didn't give her back the 5 years she'd spent broken and alone. It didn't undo the nights she'd cried herself to sleep or the mornings she'd woken up and forgotten for a moment that he was gone, only to have the loss hit her all over again. I don't know what you want me to say, Brielle admitted. I don't know if I can just forgive you because you had a good reason. Yes, you were sick. Yes, you were desperate. But you still broke my heart, Andre. You still left me with nothing but questions and pain. I know, Andre said, and there were tears in his eyes now too. I know, and I'm not asking for forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'm just asking for a chance to make things right. A chance to show you that I never stopped loving you even when I was gone. A chance to be part of your life again even if it's just as friends. Even if you never trust me the way you did before. Brielle wanted to say no. She wanted to protect herself, to guard what was left of her heart. But she was tired. So tired of being alone, of being angry, of carrying this weight. I need time, she said finally. I need time to process all of this. I can't just pretend the last 5 years didn't happen. I understand, Andre said quickly. Take all the time you need. But please at least let me help you. Tasha told me you've been struggling. That your mother is sick. Brielle felt her defenses snap back into place. I don't need your charity. It's not charity, Andre said. It's me trying to do something right after doing everything wrong. Please, Brielle. Let me help. Let me at least do that much. Before Brielle could respond, their server appeared again, this time looking slightly anxious. Excuse me, Mr. Mitchell? There's an urgent message for you at the front desk. Something about your office. Andre frowned but nodded. I'll be right back, he said to Brielle, then stood and followed the server toward the entrance. Alone at the table, Brielle tried to catch her breath. Her head was spinning. Everything she'd believed for 5 years had been turned upside down in the span of an hour. Andre hadn't abandoned her. He'd been sick. He'd made a sacrifice even if it was the wrong one. But did that change anything? Did knowing the truth make the pain any less real? She watched him at the front desk talking to someone on his phone, his expression serious. Even from across the room she could see the success that radiated from him now. He'd survived. He'd built something. He'd made it to the other side. And where was she? Still struggling. Still barely keeping her head above water. Still working a job she hated to pay for her mother's medical bills because insurance didn't cover half of what she needed. The divide between them felt wider than ever. Andre returned to the table, but instead of sitting down he remained standing. In his hand was a piece of paper and his face was pale. "Brielle," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "I need to show you something. I need you to read this." He held out the paper and Brielle took it with trembling hands. What she read there would change everything. The paper in Brielle's hands was a medical record. Or part of one anyway. Her eyes scanned the text, trying to make sense of the clinical language and codes. Patient name, Andre Mitchell. Date of service, 5 years ago, 3 months before he left. Diagnosis, acute myeloid leukemia, stage 2. Recommended treatment, immediate chemotherapy followed by possible bone marrow transplant. Estimated cost of treatment, $450,000 to $850,000, depending on response and complications. Brielle's hands shook as she read and reread the numbers. Nearly $1 million. For a man who'd been struggling to pay rent. For a couple who'd sometimes had to choose between electricity and food. "I didn't show you this to make you feel guilty," Andre said quickly, sliding back into his seat. "My assistant just sent it over. When I told her I'd found you, she thought you should see proof. She thought maybe you wouldn't believe me without documentation." "Why now?" Brielle asked, still staring at the paper. "Why send this now?" "Because she knows how long I've been looking for you. How much finding you meant to me. She wanted to make sure you understood what I was facing back then. That I wasn't just running away." Brielle set the paper down on the table, her mind struggling to process everything. She'd spent 5 years painting Andre as a villain in her story. The man who'd left her when things got hard, who'd chosen ambition over love. But this paper told a different story. This paper told the story of a man who'd been dying and desperate. "Tell me about California," she said finally. "Tell me about those 3 years." Andre took a deep breath. "It was hell," he said simply. "The treatment was brutal. There were days I couldn't get out of bed. Days I threw up everything I ate. Days I was so weak I couldn't even hold a phone. And through it all I had to work. The deal was that I'd dedicate myself to the business, that I'd be present and productive even while fighting for my life." "That's inhumane," Brielle said, anger flooding through her. "This venture capitalist, whoever he was, he took advantage of you when you were vulnerable." "Maybe," Andre agreed. "But he also saved my life. Without his money I would have died. I couldn't afford the treatment. No bank was going to give me a loan. I had no family with resources. It was his offer or nothing." "What about your parents?" Brielle asked, suddenly realizing she hadn't thought about them. "Where were they during all this?" Andre's face darkened. "Dead. Both of them. Car accident when I was 20. That's why I had no one to turn to. No family, no safety net. Just you, and I couldn't bear to drag you into my disaster." "I'm sorry," Brielle said automatically, but the words felt hollow. She'd known Andre's parents had died, but he'd never talked much about it. She'd never realized how alone he'd truly been. "Don't be sorry," Andre said. "Be angry. Be furious with me. I deserve it. I left you alone too. I made you go through 5 years of wondering and hurting, and that's on me. The illness explains it, but it doesn't excuse it." Brielle appreciated that he wasn't trying to hide behind his diagnosis. He was taking responsibility, even while explaining his actions. That was something at least. "Did you really look for me?" she asked. "For 2 years. Every day," Andre said. "I hired the best investigators I could find. I followed every lead, no matter how small. I checked hospitals thinking maybe you'd gotten married and changed your name. I checked social media, but you'd deleted all your accounts. I even went back to your old neighborhood and knocked on doors, asking if anyone knew where you'd gone." Brielle felt tears prick her eyes again. She had deleted her social media. She'd moved to a different part of town. She'd changed her phone number. After a year of waiting for Andre to come back or at least explain, she'd made herself disappear. She'd thought she was protecting herself, but in doing so, she'd made herself impossible to find. "I didn't think you'd want to find me," she admitted. I thought you'd moved on. That you'd gotten successful and forgotten about the girl you left behind. Never, Andre said fiercely. I never forgot you. Not for a single day. You were in every thought, every decision. When the company started making money, I thought about how I'd share it with you. When I bought my first house, I imagined you there with me. When I got the news that I was in remission, the first person I wanted to tell was you. But you couldn't. But I couldn't, Andre echoed. The deal with the venture capitalist had a non-compete clause that extended beyond the 3 years. I couldn't contact anyone from my previous life until the clause expired. By the time it did, 2 more years had passed. 5 years total since the day I left you. 5 years, Brielle repeated, the weight of that time settling over her like a physical thing. 5 years of her life shaped by his absence. Their food had gone cold on their plates. The restaurant was still busy around them, other diners laughing and enjoying their Christmas Eve, oblivious to the emotional storm happening at their table. What about you? Andre asked gently. Tell me about your 5 years. Tell me what I missed. Brielle didn't want to. She didn't want to revisit the pain, the struggle, the slow process of learning to live without him. But he'd been honest with her. The least she could do was return the favor. The first year was the worst, she said, staring at her hands. I kept thinking you'd come back. Or call. Or at least send a message to let me know you were alive. I filed a missing person report, but the police said there was no evidence of foul play. You'd taken your things, left no note, no sign of being forced. They said you'd left voluntarily. God, Brielle, I'm so sorry. I waited tables during the day and worked as a security guard at night, Brielle continued, needing to get it all out. I kept the apartment for 6 months, paying rent on a place that was too big for one person, hoping you'd come home. But you didn't. So I moved to a smaller place. Then an even smaller place. I stopped painting because I couldn't afford supplies and I couldn't stand to look at the canvases anyway. They reminded me too much of when we were happy. Andre's face was a mask of pain, but Brielle kept going. After 2 years, I met someone. Jason. He was kind and steady and everything you weren't. We dated for about a year. He asked me to marry him and I almost said yes. But I couldn't. Because even though I told myself I'd moved on, even though I tried to love him, I was still waiting for you. Still wondering. So I broke it off with Jason and I felt terrible because he didn't deserve that. He didn't deserve to be with someone who was still in love with a ghost. You were still in love with me? Andre asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, Brielle admitted. Maybe. Or maybe I was just in love with the memory of who we were. Either way, I couldn't move forward. I was stuck. And your mother? Tasha mentioned she's sick. Brielle nodded, glad for the change in subject even though this one was equally painful. Diabetes. She was diagnosed 3 years ago. It's gotten progressively worse. She needs insulin, regular checkups, special foods. The insurance I get through the hospital helps, but it doesn't cover everything. I've been working overtime to make up the difference, but it's never quite enough. There's always another bill, another medication, another treatment she needs. Let me help, Andre said immediately. Please. I have the resources now. I can pay for her treatment, for everything she needs. I can make sure she gets the best care available. Brielle's instinct was to refuse. She'd been taking care of her mother on her own for 3 years. She didn't need a handout from the man who'd broken her heart, no matter how good his reasons had been. But then she thought about her mother, about the way she tried to hide her pain, about the medications they'd had to skip because the budget was too tight. She thought about the fear she lived with every day, wondering if this would be the month they couldn't afford everything, if this would be when her mother's health took a turn they couldn't recover from. I don't want your charity, Brielle said carefully. But I also can't let my pride hurt my mother. If you're serious about helping, if this isn't just guilt talking, then yes. I'd be grateful for help with her medical expenses. Relief flooded Andre's face. I'm serious. Completely serious. I'll set up a meeting with my accountant tomorrow. We'll create a medical fund for your mother, make sure all her bills are covered. And Brielle, this isn't charity. This is me trying to make up for the hurt I caused. It's the least I can do. It's not the least, Brielle said. It's huge. And I, thank you. Really. Thank you. They sat in silence for a moment, the anger that had filled the space between them earlier softening into something else. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe the beginning of understanding. Can I ask you something? Andre said. You can ask. I might not answer. Fair. He smiled slightly. Why did you agree to the blind date? Tasha said you'd been refusing for months. What changed? Brielle thought about lying, about making up some excuse. But she was tired of hiding. I didn't want to be alone on Christmas, she said simply. Another year of sitting in my apartment watching everyone else celebrate while I just existed. I thought maybe if I went on this date, even if it went nowhere, at least I'd have tried. At least I'd have put myself out there. And instead you got me. Instead I got you, Brielle agreed. The last person I expected. The one person I'd convinced myself I'd never see again. Is this better or worse than being alone? Andre asked, and there was vulnerability in his voice that made her heart ache. I don't know yet, Brielle answered honestly. Ask me again when this night is over. Their server appeared, probably the 5th time that evening, looking apologetic. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the kitchen is closing soon for the holiday. Can I get you anything else? Dessert? Coffee? Brielle looked at Andre and saw her own thought reflected in his eyes. They'd barely touched their main courses. The food had been secondary to everything else happening. Just the check, please, Andre said, then looked at Brielle. Unless you want dessert? No, Brielle said. But I don't want to go home yet either. Is there somewhere we can go? Somewhere we can talk without servers interrupting? Andre nodded slowly. My place isn't far from here. Or we could go somewhere public if you'd be more comfortable. A coffee shop, maybe? The thought of going to Andre's place made Brielle's stomach flutter with nervousness. But she also knew this conversation wasn't over. They had 5 years to unpack, and that wasn't happening in a busy restaurant. Your place is fine, she said. As long as you promise to keep explaining. I need to understand everything, Andre. Not just the broad strokes. I need the details. I need to know what those 3 years were really like for you. I promise, Andre said. Full transparency. No more secrets. He paid the bill, and Brielle noticed he didn't even glance at the total before handing over his credit card. Money truly wasn't an issue for him anymore. The realization was strange, seeing the man she'd once shared ramen with now casually paying for a meal that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. They stood to leave, and Andre held out his arm hesitantly. May I? Brielle looked at his offered arm and remembered how they used to walk together, linked like they were afraid of getting separated. She remembered feeling safe with him, like as long as they were together, nothing could hurt them. But things had hurt them. Life had hurt them. His illness and his desperate choices had ripped them apart. Still she took his arm. Not because she'd forgiven him. Not because she trusted him yet. But because after 5 years of walking alone, it felt good to have someone beside her again. They walked out into the cold Chicago night, Christmas lights twinkling on every building, snow beginning to fall in soft, gentle flakes. The city was beautiful in its holiday clothes, and for the first time in years, Brielle let herself feel something other than pain when she looked at it. She let herself feel hope. Andre's car was waiting at the valet stand, and Brielle felt her eyebrows rise when she saw it. A sleek black Tesla, the kind she'd only seen in magazines or driving past her on the street carrying people who lived in a different world than she did. Company car, Andre said, catching her expression as he opened the passenger door for her. They insisted I needed something that matched our brand image. Brielle slid into the leather seat, and the car enveloped her in warmth. The interior smelled new and expensive, and there were screens everywhere, glowing with soft blue light. This was definitely not the beat-up Honda Civic Andre used to drive, the one that needed a jump-start every other morning and had duct tape holding the passenger side mirror on. Andre got in the driver's side and started the car, which made almost no sound. Electric vehicles were strange that way, silent and smooth. He pulled out into the light Christmas Eve traffic, and they drove in silence for a few minutes, the city lights reflecting off the snow-dusted streets. It's about 10 minutes from here, Andre said. I bought a condo in River North about a year ago. Nothing too flashy, but it's home. Nothing too flashy, Brielle thought, meant something completely different to a multimillionaire than it did to her. She wondered what she'd find when they got there. Probably marble countertops and floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that cost more than her annual salary. Tell me about the company, she said, needing to fill the silence with something. How did you go from a startup idea to going public? Andre glanced at her, then back at the road. It took time and a lot of work. The venture capitalist, his name was Richard Sterling, he had connections everywhere. He introduced me to the right people, got me meetings with hospital administrators, helped me refine the software. My idea was good, but it needed polish. It needed someone who understood the business side, not just the technical side. And you learned that while you were sick? I had to, Andre said. The deal was that I'd be functional, productive. There were days after chemo when I could barely stand, but I still had to show up to meetings, still had to pitch to investors. Sterling said suffering built character. He said if I wanted to survive, I needed to prove I was worth the investment. Brielle felt anger flare in her chest again. This Richard Sterling sounded like a monster, taking advantage of a dying man's desperation. That's abuse, she said flatly. What he did to you was exploitation. Maybe, Andre agreed. But it also worked. The company grew faster than anyone expected. Within 2 years, we had contracts with 15 major hospital systems. By year 3 we were negotiating with insurance companies. When I bought Sterling out, we were valued at over $300 million. $300 million. Brielle couldn't even comprehend that number. It was so far outside her reality that it might as well have been $1 trillion. And now, she asked. Now we're worth about $1 billion, Andre said casually as if he was talking about the weather. Give or take. The stock fluctuates but we're stable. Profitable. And we're doing good work, Brielle. Our software has helped millions of patients access their medical records, coordinate care between different doctors, catch potential medication interactions before they cause harm. It's making a real difference. Brielle could hear the pride in his voice, and she felt a complicated mix of emotions. She was proud of him too in a way. The Andre she'd known had been brilliant but directionless, full of ideas but lacking the resources to execute them. This Andre had taken that brilliance and turned it into something real, something meaningful. But the cost had been their relationship. And she wasn't sure she could ever see that as a fair trade. Here we are, Andre said, pulling into an underground parking garage. He swiped a card at the gate and it opened smoothly. They descended into a well-lit structure with assigned parking spots, and Andre pulled into one labeled 3502. They took an elevator up to the 35th floor, and Brielle tried not to think about how high up that was, how far removed from the ground floor reality of her life. The elevator doors opened directly into Andre's condo, which meant the entire floor was his. Brielle stepped out and caught her breath. The space was huge, an open-concept living area with windows that looked out over the Chicago skyline. The city glittered below them, a sea of lights stretching to the horizon. The furniture was modern but comfortable, grays and blues that complemented the view. There was art on the walls, abstract pieces that probably cost more than her car. But what caught Brielle's attention was the painting hanging above the fireplace. It was one of hers. She'd painted it 7 years ago, back when she and Andre had first gotten together. It was a sunset over Lake Michigan, all purples and golds and deep blues. She'd given it to him for his birthday, wrapped in newspaper because she couldn't afford proper wrapping paper. She'd assumed he'd thrown it away when he left. You kept it, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Andre came to stand beside her, looking up at the painting. Of course I kept it. It's the most valuable thing I own. It's not worth anything. I painted it on a canvas I found in a dumpster. It's worth everything to me, Andre said quietly. It reminded me of you. Of us. Of a time when we were happy even though we had nothing. I've had art dealers offer me thousands for it, thinking it's some undiscovered master. I always tell them it's not for sale. That it's priceless. Brielle felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She'd cried more tonight than she had in years, all the emotions she'd kept locked away flooding out at once. I stopped painting because it hurt too much, she admitted. Every time I picked up a brush I thought of you. Of the dreams we had. So I just stopped. I'm sorry, Andre said, and she could hear the pain in his voice. I'm so sorry that I took that from you. You were meant to create, Brielle. You were meant to bring beauty into the world. I was meant to be with you, Brielle said, the words coming out before she could stop them. That's what I thought anyway. That we were meant to be together, to build a life together. And then you were just gone, and I didn't know how to be myself without you. Andre turned to her and she saw tears in his eyes too. I'm here now. I know that doesn't fix the past, but I'm here. And I want to be part of your future if you'll let me. Brielle wanted to say yes. She wanted to fall into his arms and pretend the last 5 years hadn't happened. But she couldn't. There was still too much hurt, too much betrayal, even if it had been for good reasons. I need to sit down, she said, suddenly exhausted. Andre led her to the couch, a huge comfortable thing that she sank into gratefully. He disappeared into the kitchen and returned with 2 bottles of water and a box of tissues. He sat beside her, close but not touching, respecting her space. Ask me anything, he said. I meant what I said about full transparency. Brielle took a sip of water, trying to organize her thoughts. There were so many questions she didn't know where to start. The 3 years, she said finally. You said you couldn't contact me. But surely you could have found a way. Sent a letter, an email, something to let me know you were alive. Andre nodded slowly. I thought about it every day. But Sterling had people watching me. His assistant checked my phone records, my email, even my mail. He said it was to protect his investment, to make sure I stayed focused. If I tried to contact you, he would have known. And the consequences would have been severe. What kind of consequences? He'd pull his funding. Stop paying for my treatment. And our partnership. I'd be left with nothing and still dying. I couldn't risk it, Brielle. I couldn't risk my life and I couldn't risk the business. Too many people were depending on me by then. We had employees, contracts, obligations. So you chose them over me. I chose survival, Andre said. And I've regretted it every day since. Because what's the point of surviving if you lose the only person who ever really mattered? Brielle absorbed this, trying to see it from his perspective. If she'd been dying, if someone had offered her a way out but it meant leaving Andre, what would she have done? She wanted to think she would have chosen love over life. But she honestly didn't know. What was the treatment like? She asked, shifting topics. Andre grimaced. Hell. Pure hell. The first round of chemo made me so sick I thought I'd die from the cure instead of the disease. I lost all my hair, lost 40 pounds. There were days I couldn't keep any food down. Days I was so weak I couldn't walk across the room. And through it all I had to work. Had to show up to meetings via video call, looking like death but acting like everything was fine. That's inhumane. It's business, Andre said with a bitter smile. Sterling didn't care how I felt. He cared about results. He cared about the return on his investment. I was a commodity to him, not a person. Why didn't you walk away once you were better? Once the 3 years were up? The non-compete clause, Andre explained. It was part of the original deal. 4 or 5 years after he first invested, I couldn't contact anyone from my previous life without his permission. It was in the contract I signed. I didn't realize what I was agreeing to at the time. I was desperate and scared and I just wanted to live. By the time I understood what I'd given up, it was too late. 5 years, Brielle said again. That number kept coming up, marking the boundaries of their separation. 5 years, Andre echoed. The longest 5 years of my life. Even when I was healthy, even when the business was thriving, I was miserable. I dated a few people trying to move on, but none of them were you. No one could be you. Brielle felt a pang of jealousy at the mention of other women, which was ridiculous. They'd been apart. Of course he'd dated. Of course he'd tried to move on. She'd done the same with Jason. Tell me about now, she said, wanting to know about his life after the contract ended. The last 2 years. What have you been doing besides looking for me? Building the company. Taking it public. Hiring good people. I have about 300 employees now, spread across 5 offices. We just opened a location in New York and another in Boston. We're expanding internationally next year, starting with Canada and the UK. It all sounded impressive and important and completely foreign to Brielle's world. Do you have friends? She asked. People you're close to? Andre hesitated. Not really. I have business associates, people I work with. But friends? Real friends? No. I never let anyone get close after Sterling. I couldn't trust easily anymore. And everyone I met knew me as Andre Mitchell, the successful CEO. They didn't know the guy who used to eat ramen for every meal and patch his jeans because he couldn't afford new ones. That guy was real, Brielle said. Maybe more real than who you are now. Maybe, Andre agreed. Or maybe I'm both. The struggle shaped me, but so did the success. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago, Brielle. Neither are you. We can't go back to what we were. Then what can we do? Brielle asked, the question she'd been avoiding all night finally surfacing. Andre looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw hope and fear and love all mixed together in his eyes. We can start over, he said. Not as the people we were, but as the people we've become. We can be honest about the hurt and the distance and the ways we've changed. And we can decide if there's still something worth fighting for. Brielle wanted to believe him. She wanted to think that love could survive 5 years of separation and pain and misunderstanding. But she was scared. Terrified, actually. Because if she let herself love him again and he left again, she didn't think she'd survive it. I need time, she said, the same thing she told him at the restaurant. I can't just flip a switch and go back to how things were. My heart doesn't work that way. I know, Andre said. And I'll give you all the time you need. Days, months, years if that's what it takes. I waited 5 years to find you. I can wait however long you need to trust me again. They sat in silence for a while, looking out at the city through the huge windows. Snow was falling harder now, covering Chicago in a blanket of white. It was late, probably close to midnight. Christmas Eve would turn into Christmas Day soon. I should go, Brielle said, even though part of her didn't want to leave. My mother will worry if I'm out all night. Let me drive you, Andre said immediately. Okay. They stood, and as they walked to the elevator, Brielle found herself looking back at her painting above the fireplace. The fact that he'd kept it, that he'd treasured it for 5 years, meant something. It meant that even when he was gone, even when he'd seemed to have forgotten her completely, a part of him had held on. Maybe that was enough to build on. Maybe not. Only time would tell. In the car, as they drove through the snowy streets toward Brielle's apartment, Andre broke the silence. Can I see you again? After tonight? Can we maybe have dinner again, or coffee, or just talk? Brielle looked at him, at the hope in his face, and made a decision. Yes, she said. But we're taking this slow. No expectations, no pressure. Just two people getting to know each other again. That's perfect, Andre said, relief flooding his voice. That's all I'm asking for. When they pulled up in front of Brielle's building, a modest apartment complex in a neighborhood that was slowly being gentrified but wasn't there yet, Andre looked at it with curiosity but not judgment. This is me, Brielle said. 3rd floor, the unit with the crooked blinds. Can I walk you up? Better not. My mother's a light sleeper and I don't want to explain you tonight. Maybe after I've had time to process everything. I understand. Brielle reached for the door handle, then stopped. She turned back to Andre and saw him watching her with an expression that was so familiar it made her chest ache. Thank you, she said. For being honest. For explaining. For caring enough to look for me. Always, Andre said. I'll always care about you, Brielle. That's never going to change. She got out of the car and walked to her building entrance, turning back once to wave. Andre waved back and she could see him watching until she was safely inside. Upstairs, she let herself into the dark apartment quietly. Her mother's room was silent, which meant she was asleep. Brielle went to her own small room, sat on her bed, and finally let herself fall apart. She cried for the years they'd lost. She cried for the Andre who'd been sick and scared and alone. She cried for herself, for the girl who'd waited and hoped and eventually had to accept that he wasn't coming back. But underneath the pain there was something else. Something that felt dangerously like hope. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late for them. Maybe this Christmas Eve disaster could turn into a second chance. Her phone buzzed with a text message. She picked it up and saw it was from Andre. Thank you for tonight. For listening. For not walking away. Merry Christmas, Brielle. I hope this is the first of many. Brielle stared at the message for a long time before typing a response. Merry Christmas, Andre. We'll see. It wasn't a promise. But it wasn't a rejection either. It was possibility, and for now that was enough. Brielle woke up on Christmas morning to the smell of her mother's famous sweet potato casserole, which was strange because they'd agreed not to make a big deal of the holiday this year. Money was tight and elaborate meals were a luxury they couldn't afford. She got out of bed and padded into the small kitchen in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Her mother, Patricia Washington, stood at the stove, her thin frame wrapped in the red robe Brielle had bought her 3 years ago. She looked tired, the way she always did these days, but she was smiling. Morning, baby, Patricia said, turning to give Brielle a hug. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Mama. What are you doing? We said we were keeping it simple this year. I know, but I woke up feeling good today. Strong. And I thought, why not? It's Christmas. We deserve to celebrate. Brielle felt worry gnaw at her stomach. Her mother's energy came in waves, unpredictable and fleeting. A good day could turn into a bad one in minutes, and pushing herself too hard always had consequences. Let me help, Brielle said, taking the wooden spoon from her mother's hand. You sit down. I'll finish this. I'm fine, Brielle. Stop worrying. I always worry. It's my job. Patricia sighed but sat down at their tiny kitchen table. So, she said, her eyes twinkling with curiosity. How was the blind date? Brielle's hand froze mid-stir. The blind date. The restaurant. Andre. All of it came flooding back and she realized she'd spent the last few hours asleep trying not to think about it. It was complicated, Brielle said carefully. Complicated good or complicated bad? Both. Neither. I don't know, Mama. Patricia studied her daughter with the kind of knowing look only a mother could manage. Was he nice at least? Did he treat you right? He was very nice. Too nice maybe. Brielle stopped, not sure how much to share. Her mother knew about Andre, about the heartbreak he'd caused. How would she react to knowing he was back in Brielle's life? He's what? He's Andre, Brielle said finally, the words coming out in a rush. Tasha set me up with Andre. She didn't know about our history. It was him, Mama. After 5 years, he just appeared at my table. Patricia's eyes went wide. Andre? Your Andre? The one who left. He's not my Andre anymore. Or maybe he never was. I don't know. Brielle told her mother everything while she finished making breakfast. She told her about the shock of seeing him, about the medical diagnosis, about the impossible choice he'd made. She told her about his years in California, about the venture capitalist who'd controlled his life, about how he'd been searching for her. Patricia listened without interrupting, her face going through a range of emotions that Brielle couldn't quite read. And what did you say? Patricia asked when Brielle finished. Did you forgive him? I don't know if I can forgive him. Not yet. But I agreed to see him again. To take things slow and see if there's anything worth salvaging. Patricia nodded slowly. That boy loved you. I could see it every time he looked at you. But love isn't always enough, baby. Sometimes circumstances get in the way. Sometimes life gets in the way. Do you think I'm making a mistake? Giving him another chance. I think you're doing what your heart needs to do. Just be careful. Protect yourself. Don't let him break you twice. Brielle hugged her mother, grateful for her understanding. They ate breakfast together, the sweet potato casserole tasting like childhood and comfort. For a few minutes, Brielle let herself pretend things were simple, that this was just another Christmas with no complications. Then her phone rang. She almost didn't answer it when she saw Andre's name on the screen. But curiosity won out. Hello. Brielle, hi. I'm sorry to call so early. I know it's Christmas and you're probably with your mother. It's okay. What's up? There was a pause and Brielle could hear voices in the background, urgent and overlapping. Something's happened, Andre said, his voice tight with stress. Something I need to show you. Can I come pick you up? It'll only take an hour, maybe 2. It's important. Brielle felt alarm bells go off in her head. What happened? Are you okay? I'm fine. But there's information about my time in California about Sterling that just came to light. Information that explains a lot. I need you to see it. Brielle looked at her mother, who was watching her with concern. Give me 30 minutes, Brielle said. I need to shower and change. Thank you. I'll be there soon. Brielle hung up and turned to her mother. I have to go. Andre needs to show me something. Will you be okay here alone? I've been okay alone for years, baby. Go. But promise me you'll be careful. I promise. 25 minutes later, Brielle was dressed in jeans and a green sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She'd put on minimal makeup, just enough to hide the evidence of last night's crying. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a woman who was tired and confused and trying desperately to hold herself together. Andre's Tesla pulled up exactly 30 minutes after his call, as if he'd been circling the block. Brielle kissed her mother goodbye and headed downstairs, pulling her coat tight against the cold. Andre got out to open her door and she noticed he looked different today. Less polished, more stressed. He was wearing jeans and a blue sweater instead of a suit, and his hair was slightly messy as if he'd been running his hands through it. Thank you for coming, he said as she got in. I know this is strange, asking you to drop everything on Christmas. What's going on, Andre? You're scaring me. I got an email this morning from a lawyer, Andre explained, pulling back into traffic. A lawyer representing a woman named Rebecca Sterling. Sterling? Like Richard Sterling? His daughter. She reached out because she found something in her father's files. Something about me, about the contract I signed. She thought I should see it. What? What's in it? I don't know yet. She wouldn't send it electronically. Said it was too sensitive. She asked to meet in person, so she's at my office right now. I wanted you there when I looked at it. You deserve to know the whole truth, whatever it is. They drove in tense silence to Andre's office building, a gleaming glass tower in the downtown business district. Even on Christmas, the building was beautiful, its lobby decorated with a huge tree and garlands. But the festive decorations felt wrong given the tension radiating from Andre. They took an elevator up to the 12th floor, where Andre's company occupied half the space. The office was empty today, just dim emergency lighting and the hum of computers left on standby. Andre led Brielle to a conference room where a woman in her 30s sat waiting. Rebecca Sterling stood when they entered. She was tall and elegant, with dark hair and sharp eyes that reminded Brielle of a hawk. She shook Andre's hand, then Brielle's, her grip firm and professional. Thank you for coming, Rebecca said, sitting back down. On the table in front of her was a thick manila folder. I know this is unusual timing, but when I found this yesterday, I knew I couldn't wait. You needed to see it as soon as possible. What is it? Andre asked, sitting down across from her. Brielle sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Rebecca opened the folder and pulled out a stack of papers. These are copies of emails between my father and his legal team. Emails about you, about the contract you signed, about... She paused, seeming to struggle with what to say next. About Brielle. Brielle's stomach dropped. What about me? My father didn't just demand that Andre cut contact with his previous life. He specifically targeted you. He hired investigators to track you, to make sure Andre couldn't find you even if he tried. He wanted you out of the picture permanently. Andre's face went pale. What? Why would he do that? Rebecca slid a printed email across the table. Read for yourself. Andre picked up the paper with shaking hands. Brielle leaned over to read it with him, and the words made her feel sick. The email was from Richard Sterling to his legal team, dated 6 months after Andre had signed the contract. In cold, clinical language, it detailed a plan to remove romantic distractions from Andre's life. It specifically mentioned Brielle by name, describing her as a liability and an impediment to maximum productivity. The email outlined how Sterling's team had helped Brielle's landlord refuse to forward her mail when she moved. How they'd made sure her phone number changed when she switched carriers. How they'd even paid Brielle's former employer at the diner to not provide information if anyone came looking for her. Andre set the paper down, his hands trembling. He deliberately made her impossible to find. He didn't just enforce the contract. He actively sabotaged any chance of us reconnecting. There's more, Rebecca said grimly. She pulled out another email. This one is from 2 years ago, right when your contract ended. My father knew you'd start looking for Brielle. So he had his team create false leads, send your investigators in the wrong directions. Every dead end you hit, every false lead you followed, it was engineered by him. Brielle felt tears streaming down her face. All this time she thought Andre had found success and forgotten her. But the truth was worse. Someone had deliberately kept them apart, had manipulated their lives like they were pieces on a chessboard. Why? Brielle asked, her voice breaking. Why would he do this? Rebecca looked uncomfortable. My father was complicated. Brilliant in business but ruthless. He believed that emotional attachments made people weak, made them less productive. He saw you as a threat to his investment in Andre. So he removed the threat. He had no right, Andre said, his voice shaking with fury. He had no right to interfere in my personal life like that. I know, Rebecca said. And I'm sorry. I found these emails when I was going through his files after he died. He passed away 3 months ago. Heart attack. I've been sorting through his affairs, and when I found this, I knew I had to tell you. You deserve to know the truth. Andre stood up abruptly, pacing to the windows. All this time. All these years I thought the separation was my fault. That the contract terms were harsh but legal. But this is different. This is manipulation. This is control. Brielle stood and went to him, placing a hand on his arm. It's not your fault. None of this is your fault. But it is, Andre said, turning to face her. I signed the contract. I agreed to the terms. I should have read it more carefully. I should have fought harder. You were dying, Brielle reminded him. You were desperate. He took advantage of that. Rebecca cleared her throat. There's something else you should know. The contract you signed, it had clauses that weren't legal. My father's lawyers knew it, but they bet on you not having the resources to fight. If you had taken it to court, several provisions would have been thrown out, including the one about not contacting your family and friends. Andre turned back to Rebecca, his expression a mix of shock and anger. You're saying the whole thing was unenforceable? Parts of it, yes. Not the business terms, those were solid. But the personal control provisions, the demands about your private life, those crossed legal lines. You could have ignored them without consequence. But my father made sure you didn't know that. The room fell silent as this information sank in. Brielle felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. Everything they'd believed about the past 5 years was wrong. Andre could have contacted her. He could have fought the contract. They could have been together. But Sterling had made sure Andre never knew he had options. Had made sure Brielle stayed lost. Had controlled their lives from behind the scenes, treating them like pawns in a game only he understood the rules to. I'm so sorry, Rebecca said, standing. I know this doesn't undo the damage. I know saying sorry isn't enough. But I wanted you to have the truth. And I wanted to offer some kind of reparation. She pulled out a document from the folder and slid it across to Andre. This is a settlement offer. My father's estate is substantial, and a portion of it should go to making amends for the harm he caused. This document authorizes a payment of $10 million to you, Andre, as compensation for the emotional distress and lost years caused by his illegal actions. And it authorizes another $10 million to Brielle for the same reasons. Brielle felt the room spin. $10 million? It's the least we can do, Rebecca said. My father wronged both of you terribly. This money won't give you back the time you lost, but maybe it can help you build a future together. Or separately. Whatever you decide. Andre stared at the document like it might bite him. I don't want his money. I don't want anything from him. I understand, Rebecca said. But the money exists whether you want it or not. My father's estate is being liquidated and distributed according to his will. He left specific instructions for payments to people he'd wronged in business. You're on that list. So is Brielle now that I've added her. You can refuse it, but then it just goes back into the general estate to be divided among distant relatives who never knew my father and don't care about his legacy. Or you can take it and do something good with it. Use it to help people. Use it to build the life you should have had. Brielle looked at Andre, trying to gauge his reaction. She could see the war happening inside him, the desire to reject everything connected to Sterling fighting against the practical reality of what that money could do. Think about it, Rebecca said, gathering her things. Talk it over. The offer stands for 30 days. After that, it goes back to the estate. I'll leave you two alone to process all this. She walked out, and the conference room fell silent except for the hum of the building's ventilation system. Andre collapsed back into his chair, his head in his hands. Brielle sat beside him, not sure what to say or do. He stole 5 years from us, Andre said finally, his voice muffled. 5 years we can never get back. And now he's trying to buy forgiveness with money he'll never miss because he's dead. We don't have to take it, Brielle said, even though her mind was racing with thoughts of what that money could do. Her mother's medical bills. The debt she'd accumulated. The freedom to paint again. The ability to help others the way they'd needed help. Don't we? Andre asked, looking up at her. $10 million for you, Brielle. That's enough to take care of your mother for the rest of her life. To quit your job at the hospital. To do whatever you want. How can I ask you to refuse that out of pride? It's blood money, Brielle said, but her conviction wavered even as she said it. Maybe, Andre agreed. But blood money spends the same as any other kind. And it could do real good in the right hands. They sat in silence, both of them processing the magnitude of what they'd just learned. Finally, Andre stood and offered Brielle his hand. Come on. Let's get out of here. I can't think in this office. They left the building and walked through the snowy streets of Chicago, neither of them speaking. The city was quiet on Christmas morning, most people inside with their families. Brielle and Andre walked aimlessly, their breath forming clouds in the cold air. Do you think things would have been different? Brielle asked eventually. If Sterling hadn't interfered? If you'd known the contract wasn't fully legal? I don't know, Andre admitted. Maybe. Maybe I would have risked breaking it, risked losing his funding. Or maybe I would have made the same choices out of fear. I was sick, Brielle. I was terrified. Fear makes people do things they regret. I understand that now, Brielle said. Last night I was so angry. But learning all this, seeing those emails, I get it. You were manipulated. We both were. They found themselves at Millennium Park in front of Cloud Gate, the famous bean sculpture. It reflected the city and the sky in them, distorted and surreal. Brielle looked at their reflection, two figures standing close but not quite touching, and wondered if that image was a metaphor for where they were now. What do we do? She asked. About the money. About us. About everything. Andre turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. I don't know about the money. That's something we can decide later. But about us? I know what I want. I want you back in my life, Brielle. However you'll have me. As friends, as partners, as whatever you're comfortable with. I want to build something real with you, something that Sterling and his manipulation can't touch. Brielle looked into his eyes and saw sincerity there and love and hope. She thought about the painting above his fireplace, about the fact that he'd kept it for 5 years. She thought about how he'd searched for her, how even when he'd been manipulated and misled, he'd never stopped trying. I want that too, she admitted. But I'm scared. I'm scared of getting hurt again. I'm scared of trusting you and having you disappear. I won't disappear, Andre promised. Never again. I swear on everything I have, everything I am, I will never leave you by choice. If you take me back, you're stuck with me forever. Brielle felt a smile tug at her lips despite everything. Forever is a long time. Not long enough, Andre said, and then he did something he hadn't done since the night before he left 5 years ago. He kissed her. It was soft and gentle and tasted like tears and snow and second chances. And for the first time in 5 years, Brielle let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Brielle rested her forehead against André's. "Merry Christmas," she whispered. "Merry Christmas," he whispered back. "The best one I've had in years." They stood there in the snow, holding each other, while Chicago moved around them and the Christmas morning sun climbed higher in the sky. They had a lot to figure out still. The money, their relationship, how to move forward after everything they'd learned. But right now, in this moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was that they'd found each other again. And this time they weren't letting go. They ended up at a small diner not far from the park, one of the few places open on Christmas Day. It was nearly empty, just them and an elderly couple in a corner booth. They slid into a table by the window and ordered coffee and pancakes, comfort food that reminded Brielle of simpler times. "I need to tell you about that last day," André said once they'd both warmed up with the hot coffee. "The day I left. You deserve to know exactly what happened." Brielle wrapped her hands around her mug, grateful for the warmth. "Okay." André took a deep breath. "I'd known for 2 weeks that I was going to leave. Sterling had made his offer, I'd signed the contract, and the arrangements were being made. Every morning I woke up next to you, I wanted to tell you. Every night when you came home exhausted from your double shifts, I wanted to explain. But I couldn't find the words. How do you tell someone you love that you're abandoning them? You just tell them," Brielle said quietly. "You trust them to understand. I know that now. But then I convinced myself I was protecting you. I thought if I just disappeared, if I left clean without a long goodbye, it would be easier on both of us. You could be angry at me instead of sad for me. You could move on without guilt." "It wasn't easier," Brielle said, her voice tight. "It was torture. I thought you were dead. I thought something terrible had happened to you. I called hospitals, police stations, morgues. I filed missing person reports. I drove myself crazy trying to find you." André flinched. "I didn't think about that. I should have, but I didn't. I was so focused on what I thought was right that I didn't consider what you'd actually go through. Tell me about that morning. The morning you left." André stared into his coffee. "You kissed me goodbye before your shift. You told me you loved me. And I almost broke. I almost told you everything. But then you were gone and I knew I had to move fast or I'd lose my nerve. Sterling's people came at 9. They helped me pack my things, just clothes and my laptop. They said everything else could be replaced. They gave me an envelope with $500 and told me to leave a note if I wanted, but to keep it brief." "Did you write one?" Brielle asked. She'd always wondered if there had been a note she somehow missed, some explanation that got lost. "I tried," André said. "I wrote 10 different versions. But they all felt wrong. Everything I said sounded like excuses or lies. How do you write 'I'm leaving because I'm dying and someone offered me a way out'? How do you explain that without sounding like you're asking for pity?" So in the end I left nothing. I just walked out of our apartment and got into Sterling's car, and I told myself I was doing the right thing. "Where did they take you?" "Straight to the airport. First-class tickets to San Francisco. I'd never flown first class before. It felt wrong, sitting in that comfortable seat with champagne and hot towels while you were probably starting your shift at the diner, exhausted and unaware that your life was about to fall apart. When we landed, they took me to a hospital for my first round of treatment. That night, while you were probably coming home to an empty apartment, I was in a hospital bed getting poison pumped into my veins." Brielle felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "Did you think about me?" "That night?" "Every second," André said, his voice breaking. "I thought about you coming home tired and finding me gone. I thought about you calling my phone and it going straight to voicemail because Sterling's people had already disconnected it. I thought about you searching for answers that I couldn't give you. And I hated myself. I've never stopped hating myself for what I did to you that day." Their waitress brought their pancakes, but neither of them moved to eat. They just sat there, the food growing cold between them while they confronted the truth of what had happened. "What was California like?" Brielle asked eventually. "The house you lived in, the life you had?" "Lonely," André said simply. "Sterling put me up in a sterile apartment in San Jose. Modern, expensive, empty. I'd go to the hospital for treatment, come home and work on the business from my laptop, then pass out from exhaustion. For 3 years that was my life. Treatment, work, sleep. Over and over. Sterling's assistant checked on me weekly to make sure I was staying focused. I had no friends. I wasn't allowed to make personal connections. The few people I interacted with were business contacts, and those relationships were purely professional. That sounds like prison. It felt like prison, Andre agreed. But it was a prison that kept me alive. Without Sterling's money, I would have died within 6 months. The doctors told me that later once I was in remission. They said my case was severe enough that without immediate, aggressive treatment, I had no chance. Sterling saved my life even if his methods were cruel. Do you think he knew? Brielle asked. That what he was doing was wrong? That the contract terms were illegal? I'm sure he knew. Rebecca confirmed that his lawyers were aware. He just didn't care. To him, I was an investment. And investments need to be managed, controlled, optimized for maximum return. My personal happiness didn't factor into his calculations. The bitterness in Andre's voice was palpable. Brielle reached across the table and took his hand. But you survived. You got through it. And now he's dead and you're free. Am I free though? Andre asked, looking at their joined hands. Or am I still trapped by what he did? The fact that he's dead doesn't undo the 5 years he stole from us. It doesn't give us back the time we lost. No, Brielle agreed. But it does mean he can't hurt us anymore. We get to decide what happens next. He doesn't have that power anymore. They finally started eating, the pancakes soggy but sweet. Outside, snow continued to fall, and families walked by with children in bright winter coats, carrying new toys and wearing happy smiles. What do you think we should do? Andre asked. About Rebecca's offer? Brielle had been thinking about this since they left the office. I think we should take it. Both of us. But we should use it to help others. People who are in the situation you were in or the situation I've been in. People who are desperate and sick and have nowhere to turn. Andre's eyes lit up. A foundation. We could create a foundation that helps people access medical care when they can't afford it. And helps families of sick people too, Brielle added, warming to the idea. So they don't have to choose between rent and medicine. So they don't have to work 3 jobs and still fall behind. We could call it the Second Chance Foundation, Andre suggested. Or just the Washington Mitchell Foundation, Brielle said. No fancy names. Just our names working together to help people. They spent the next hour talking about possibilities, sketching ideas on napkins. They talked about grant programs and partnerships with hospitals. They talked about financial counseling and resource navigation. They got so caught up in planning that Brielle almost forgot about the weight of everything else they were dealing with. Finally, as the lunch rush started to fill the diner, they paid their bill and stepped back out into the cold. Where to now? Andre asked. I should get home, Brielle said. My mother will be wondering where I am. Can I come with you? Andre asked. I'd like to see her again. To apologize for disappearing the way I did. Brielle hesitated. Her mother had loved Andre once, had welcomed him into their family like the son she'd never had. But his leaving had hurt her too, and Brielle wasn't sure how she'd react to seeing him again. Okay, she said finally. But be prepared. My mama doesn't hold back when she's got something to say. They drove to Brielle's apartment, and Andre found street parking a block away. As they walked up to the building, Brielle noticed Andre looking around at the neighborhood with barely concealed concern. It's not great, Brielle admitted. But it's what I can afford. And it's close to the hospital and to Mama's doctors. I wasn't judging, Andre said quickly. I was just thinking about how you shouldn't have had to struggle this way. If Sterling hadn't interfered, if I'd been able to find you sooner, I could have helped. I survived, Brielle said, echoing his earlier words. I got through it. And I learned I was stronger than I thought. They climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, and Brielle unlocked her apartment door. Inside, her mother was sitting on the couch, watching a Christmas movie and folding laundry. Patricia looked up when they entered, and her eyes went wide when she saw Andre. Mama, Brielle said, you remember Andre? Patricia stood slowly, her expression unreadable. She looked Andre up and down, taking in his expensive clothes and his nervous expression. I remember, she said finally. Andre stepped forward, his hands clasped in front of him. Mrs. Washington, I owe you an apology. A huge apology. What I did 5 years ago was wrong. I hurt your daughter and I hurt you too. There are reasons for what I did, but they don't excuse the pain I caused. I'm sorry. Truly deeply sorry. Patricia studied him for a long moment, and Brielle held her breath. Then, slowly, her mother smiled. Well, at least you got some manners since you've been gone. Come here, boy. She opened her arms, and Andre crossed the room to hug her. Brielle saw tears in his eyes as Patricia patted his back. My daughter told me what happened, Patricia said, pulling back to look at him. About you being sick, about that awful man who kept you apart. That's a heavy burden to carry. Yes, ma'am, Andre said. But you're here now. That's what matters. You're here and you're trying to make it right. That counts for something. I'm trying, Andre agreed. But I have a long way to go to earn back your trust. And Brielle's. Trust is earned slowly but lost quickly, Patricia said. You remember that. My daughter gave you her heart once and you broke it. She gives it to you again, you better handle it with care. I will, Andre promised. I swear I will. Patricia nodded, satisfied. Good. Now sit down and tell me about this foundation Brielle mentioned. Seems like you two have been busy this morning. They spent the next few hours talking, the three of them gathered in the small living room. Andre explained everything to Patricia, showed her the documents from Rebecca, talked about the foundation they wanted to create. Patricia listened carefully, asking questions, offering suggestions. You should include mental health support too, she said at one point. Being sick is hard on the mind as much as the body. People need counseling, therapy, someone to talk to about what they're going through. That's brilliant, Andre said, making a note on his phone. I hadn't thought of that. That's why you need to include actual sick people and their families in your planning, Patricia said with a smile. We know what's needed because we've lived it. By the time evening came, they'd outlined a basic structure for the foundation. They'd need lawyers and accountants to make it official, but they had a vision. Something concrete they could work toward together. I should go, Andre said as darkness fell outside the windows. Let you two have your Christmas evening. You could stay for dinner, Patricia offered. It's nothing fancy, just leftovers from breakfast, but you're welcome. Andre looked at Brielle, who nodded. Stay. Please. So he stayed, and they ate sweet potato casserole and watched Christmas movies, and for a few hours, Brielle let herself imagine this was her life now. Andre back, her mother healthy, a future full of possibility instead of just survival. When Andre finally left, close to midnight, Brielle walked him downstairs to his car. Thank you for today, Andre said. For introducing me to your mother again, for planning the foundation with me. For giving me a chance. Thank you for being honest, Brielle replied. For explaining everything. It doesn't erase the hurt, but it helps me understand. Where do we go from here? Andre asked. Are we together? Are we dating? Are we just friends? Brielle thought about it. I think we're somewhere in between. We're not the people we were 5 years ago. We need to get to know each other again. But we're not just friends either. So maybe we're something new. Something undefined. I can live with undefined, Andre said. As long as I get to see you again. You'll see me again, Brielle promised. We have a foundation to build. Andre smiled, and even in the dim streetlight, Brielle could see the hope in his eyes. We do. And we're going to do amazing things, Brielle. Together. He kissed her goodnight, soft and sweet, and then drove away. Brielle stood on the sidewalk for a long time after his car disappeared, breathing in the cold air and feeling something she hadn't felt in years. She felt like she had a future to look forward to. The day after Christmas, Brielle woke up to 3 text messages from Andre. The first had been sent at 6 in the morning. Good morning. I hope you slept well. I couldn't sleep at all. Too excited about everything. The second came at 7. I've been thinking about the foundation. Would you want to meet with my lawyers this week? Get things started officially? The third was at 8. Sorry if I'm being too pushy. I'm just eager to start building our future. No pressure though. Take your time. Brielle smiled at her phone, warmth spreading through her chest. The old Andre had been enthusiastic too, full of energy and ideas. It was nice to see that part of him hadn't changed. She texted back, meet me at Miller's Coffee at noon? We can talk about next steps. His response was immediate, I'll be there. Brielle spent the morning helping her mother with laundry and straightening up the apartment. Patricia was moving slowly today, the energy she'd had yesterday depleted. It was always like this. One good day followed by several difficult ones. You need to take your medication, Brielle reminded her, bringing a glass of water and the morning pills. I already took them, Patricia said, but Brielle saw the full pill organizer on the counter and knew her mother was confused. No, Mama. You didn't? Please, take them now. Patricia looked at the pills with frustration. All these medications and I still feel terrible. Sometimes I wonder what's the point. The point is staying alive, Brielle said gently. The point is being here with me. Patricia swallowed the pills without further argument, and Brielle felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. This was her life. Working, caregiving, managing medications, monitoring symptoms. It had been her life for 3 years and she'd accepted it as her reality. But now, with Andre back and the foundation money on the horizon, she was seeing a different possibility. A future where she could afford a home health aide to help. Where she could work less and be present more. Where her mother could have the best care available instead of just the bare minimum insurance would cover. The hope was dangerous. It made her heart race with possibility and fear in equal measure. At 11:30, Brielle kissed her mother goodbye and headed to Miller's Coffee, a neighborhood shop she'd been going to for years. It was busy with the post-holiday crowd, people returning unwanted gifts or just getting out of their houses after days with family. Andre was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 coffees in front of him. He stood when he saw her, smiling widely. "I got you a caramel latte," he said. "I remembered it was your favorite." Brielle felt tears prick her eyes at this small gesture. 5 years apart and he still remembered her coffee order. "Thank you," she said, sitting down and wrapping her hands around the warm cup. "So," Andre said, pulling out his phone. "I couldn't sleep last night, so I started doing research. I've been reading about charitable foundations, about how to structure them, what regulations we need to follow. It's complex but doable. With the right legal team, we could have the foundation operational within 3 months. 3 months, Brielle repeated. That's fast. Too fast. Andre asked, concern crossing his face. We can slow down if you want. No, Brielle said. Fast is good. There are people out there right now who need help. Every day we wait is another day someone is struggling. Andre beamed at her. Exactly what I was thinking. So here's what I'm proposing. We take both settlement amounts, 20 million total, and use that as the founding capital. We set up a board of directors, you and me as co-chairs. We hire staff to manage applications and distribute funds. And we create clear criteria for who qualifies for help. What criteria? Brielle asked. Medical crisis, financial hardship, limited access to insurance or government assistance. We focus on people who fall through the cracks. The ones who make too much for Medicaid but not enough to afford insurance premiums. The ones with chronic conditions that require constant expensive care. The ones who are choosing between medication and rent. Brielle nodded. These were her people, the demographic she knew too well. We should also have an emergency fund. For acute situations. Someone who needs immediate surgery but can't afford it. Someone whose condition will become life-threatening if they don't get treatment now. Yes, Andre said, making notes. Emergency grants with expedited approval. We could partner with hospitals directly, have them refer cases to us. They spent the next 2 hours planning, their coffee growing cold as they worked through details. Other customers came and went, but Brielle barely noticed. She was absorbed in creating something meaningful, something that could genuinely help people. There's something else I want to talk about, Andre said eventually, setting down his phone. Something personal. Brielle tensed slightly. Okay. I know we said we'd take things slow. That we'd figure out what we are to each other. But I need you to know where I stand. I'm all in, Brielle. I'm not just here for the foundation or because I feel guilty. I'm here because I love you. I never stopped loving you. And I want us to work toward being together again. Really together. Brielle's heart pounded. Andre. I know you're scared. I know you need time. But I also don't want there to be any ambiguity about my intentions. I want you back. I want us back. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn that. Brielle looked at him, at the sincerity in his eyes, and felt her carefully constructed walls crumble a little more. I love you too, she admitted. I've been trying not to. I've been trying to protect myself. But the truth is I never stopped loving you either. Not completely. There was always this part of me that held on to hope that you'd come back, that you'd explain, that we'd get another chance. We have that chance now, Andre said, reaching across the table to take her hand. We have the chance to start over. Not to go back to what we were, but to become something new. Something stronger because we've both survived things that would have broken weaker people. I'm still scared, Brielle confessed. So am I, Andre said. Terrified, actually. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. They sat in silence for a moment, hands clasped across the table. Then Brielle made a decision. Let's do it, she said. Let's really try. But we need to set some ground rules. Whatever you want, Andre agreed immediately. First we have to be honest. Completely honest. No more keeping secrets to protect each other. Something's wrong, we talk about it. If you're scared or struggling, you tell me. Deal? Deal. Second, we move at my pace. If I need space or time, you give it to me without making me feel guilty. Absolutely. Third, we build our own relationship. Not trying to recreate what we had before but discovering what we can be now. We're both different people. We need to learn each other again. I like that, Andre said. What else? Fourth, we include my mother in decisions that affect her. She's not just part of my life. She's family. And if you're with me, she's your family too. I wouldn't have it any other way. And fifth, Brielle said, her voice softening. You have to forgive yourself. For leaving, for the lost years, for all of it. You made the best choice you could with the information you had. Sterling manipulated both of us. You're not the villain in this story, Andre. You're a survivor just like me. Andre's eyes filled with tears. I don't know if I can forgive myself. Try, Brielle said. Because I can't move forward with someone who's constantly punishing himself for the past. We both need to let go of what happened and focus on what we're building now. Andre nodded, wiping his eyes. Okay, I'll try. That's all I can promise. That's enough. They left the coffee shop holding hands, and Brielle felt lighter than she had in years. There were still obstacles ahead, still conversations they needed to have and wounds that needed more time to heal. But they were moving forward together, and that was what mattered. Over the next week they fell into a routine. Andre would come by Brielle's apartment every morning before she went to work, bringing breakfast for her and Patricia. He'd spend time talking with Patricia, asking about her health, her needs, her thoughts on the foundation. He'd drive Brielle to work, using the commute time to discuss plans and logistics. In the evenings, after Brielle finished her shift, Andre would pick her up and they'd spend a few hours together. Sometimes they'd go to dinner at restaurants Brielle had never been able to afford. Sometimes they'd just walk through the city talking about everything and nothing. And sometimes they'd sit in his condo, working on foundation documents while soft music played in the background. Brielle watched Andre interact with her mother and felt something shift inside her. He was patient with Patricia's confusion, gentle when she forgot things they'd discussed the day before. He researched her condition on his own time, coming back with questions for her doctors and suggestions for treatments they might not have considered. You don't have to do all this, Brielle told him one evening as they left yet another doctor's appointment. Andre had insisted on accompanying them, taking notes and asking about clinical trials. I want to, Andre said simply. Your mother matters to you, which means she matters to me. And besides, she's wonderful. I missed her while I was gone. She was always so kind to me even when we had nothing. She loved you, Brielle said. She was heartbroken when you left. Not just for me but for herself too. She'd started thinking of you as the son she never had. I won't hurt her again, Andre promised. Or you. I'm here for the long haul, Brielle. You're going to get sick of me before this is over. I don't think I could ever get sick of you. On New Year's Eve, Andre invited Brielle to a party at his office. His employees were hosting it, celebrating the company's successful year and looking forward to the next one. Brielle almost said no, intimidated by the thought of meeting Andre's business colleagues, but he'd been so excited about introducing her that she agreed. She bought a new dress for the occasion, a deep maroon wrap dress that made her feel beautiful. It had been years since she'd dressed up for anything, and when she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman looking back. You look stunning, her mother said, helping her with her necklace. Like the girl you used to be before the world got heavy. I feel like her, Brielle admitted. A little bit. Is that okay? Is it okay to be happy when we're still dealing with so much? Baby, it's more than okay. It's necessary. Joy doesn't mean forgetting pain. It means choosing to live fully despite it. Andre picked her up at 7, and his reaction when he saw her made her blush. You're gorgeous, he said, handing her a small wrapped box. I got you something. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet with a small charm shaped like a paintbrush. I know you stopped painting, Andre said as she stared at it. But I hope you'll start again someday. And when you do, I want you to remember that your art matters. That you matter. Brielle couldn't speak. She just held out her wrist so he could fasten the bracelet, then kissed him softly. Thank you. For everything. The party was in full swing when they arrived, the office transformed with lights and decorations. Brielle met Andre's employees and was surprised by how warmly they welcomed her. They'd clearly heard about her, and they seemed genuinely happy that Andre had found her again. He talked about you all the time, one woman named Kayla confided during a quiet moment. He never said your name, but we knew. We knew there was someone he was looking for. And when he came in the day after Christmas all lit up and happy, we knew he'd found you. As midnight approached, everyone gathered near the windows overlooking the city. Andre pulled Brielle close, his arm around her waist. This year is going to be different, he said quietly, meant only for her. This year we're together. We're building something beautiful. We're going to help people and heal and create the life we should have had all along. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. I love you, Brielle said. 7, 6, 5. I love you too, Andre replied. 4, 3, 2, 1. The room erupted in cheers as fireworks exploded over the city. Andre kissed Brielle and she kissed him back, and in that moment, everything else fell away. The lost years, the pain, the manipulation, all of it faded into background noise. What mattered was now. What mattered was them together facing forward. They pulled apart eventually, both laughing. Happy New Year, Brielle. Happy New Year, Andre. Here's to second chances. To second chances, he echoed, and they kissed again as the fireworks continued to light up the Chicago sky. The new year brought momentum. Within 2 weeks, Andre's lawyers had drawn up the paperwork for the Washington Mitchell Foundation. They'd outlined the mission, established the board, and created a structure for how grants would be distributed. On a cold Tuesday in mid-January, Brielle and Andre sat in a conference room with 5 lawyers and 2 accountants, signing document after document. The $20 million from Sterling's estate had been transferred into a foundation account. It was real now, official, ready to start helping people. Congratulations, one of the lawyers said when the last document was signed. You're now the co-chairs of a fully operational charitable foundation. You can start accepting applications immediately. Brielle looked at Andre and they both grinned. This was happening. They were actually doing this. Thank you, Andre said, shaking hands around the table. We couldn't have done this without your help. After the meeting, they walked to a nearby restaurant for lunch, both of them buzzing with excitement. We need to start spreading the word, Brielle said. Let hospitals and clinics know we exist. Set up a website where people can apply for grants. Already on it, Andre said, showing her his phone. I had my marketing team create a basic website last week. It's simple now, but it works. We can take applications starting tomorrow. You're amazing, Brielle said, and meant it. We're amazing, Andre corrected. This is a team effort. Over lunch, Andre's phone buzzed with a call. He glanced at it, frowned, and answered. Andre Mitchell speaking. Yes, this is he. I see. I'll be there as soon as possible. He hung up and looked at Brielle, his expression serious. That was Memorial Hospital. Your mother's doctor wants to see us. Both of us. This afternoon if possible. Brielle felt her stomach drop. What? What's wrong? Is she okay? He wouldn't say over the phone. Just that it's important we come in. They abandoned their lunch and drove immediately to the hospital. Brielle tried calling her mother but got no answer, which made her anxiety spike higher. Had something happened? Had her mother collapsed? Was she in the emergency room? When they reached the hospital, they were directed to Dr. Harrison's office, a small space lined with medical texts and family photos. Dr. Harrison was a kind man in his 60s who'd been treating Patricia for 2 years. He stood when they entered, his expression somber. Please sit down. Brielle grabbed Andre's hand, needing the support. Is my mother okay? What's happened? Your mother is fine, Dr. Harrison said quickly. She's at home resting. I apologize for alarming you. But I needed to speak with both of you about her condition and her treatment options. Relief flooded through Brielle. Treatment options? I thought we were doing everything we could. Dr. Harrison pulled up some files on his computer. We've been managing Patricia's diabetes with medication and lifestyle changes. It's been moderately effective. But her condition is progressive, and we're reaching the limit of what standard care can do. Her kidney function is declining. Her vision is being affected. In another year, maybe 2, she'll likely need dialysis. Brielle felt tears spring to her eyes. She'd known her mother was getting worse, but hearing it stated so clinically made it real in a way she'd been avoiding. What are the other options? Andre asked, his hand tightening around Brielle's. There's a new treatment, Dr. Harrison said. An innovative approach that combines medication with regular pancreatic infusions. It's shown remarkable results in clinical trials. Patients have seen their symptoms stabilize, even improve. Some have avoided dialysis entirely. But it's expensive, and insurance doesn't cover it yet because it's still considered experimental. How expensive? Brielle asked, though she dreaded the answer. The full treatment course, including all medications and procedures, runs about $500,000 over 2 years. Brielle felt the air leave her lungs. $500,000. Even with the foundation money, that was a massive amount. And the foundation wasn't meant for personal use. It was meant to help strangers, people in need. I can pay for it, Andre said immediately. That's not a problem. Andre, you can't, Brielle said. That's too much. It's not too much. Nothing is too much when it comes to your mother's health. Dr. Harrison looked between them. Mr. Mitchell, while your generosity is appreciated, I need to be clear about what we're discussing. This isn't a one-time payment. If the treatment works, Patricia would need maintenance infusions for the rest of her life. We're looking at potentially millions of dollars over her lifetime. Then we'll pay millions of dollars, Andre said firmly. Money isn't the issue here. Brielle pulled her hand away from Andre's. It is the issue. I can't let you spend that kind of money on my mother. It's not right. Why not? Andre asked, genuinely confused. I have the money. I want to help. Your mother deserves the best care available. Because it makes me feel like I owe you, Brielle said, her voice rising. Like I'm with you because of what you can provide, not because I love you. The room fell silent. Dr. Harrison looked uncomfortable, clearly wishing he wasn't witnessing this conversation. Andre turned to face Brielle fully. Is that what you think? That I'm trying to buy your love with money? No, Brielle said quickly, then hesitated. I don't know. Maybe. All of this is moving so fast. The foundation, us getting back together, and now this. It feels like you're trying to fix everything with money, and some things can't be fixed that way. Your mother's health can be, Andre said gently. This isn't about us, Brielle. This is about giving Patricia a chance at a better life. Don't let your pride or your fear about our relationship deny her that chance. Brielle knew he was right, but accepting felt impossible. All her life she'd taken care of herself and her mother. She'd never relied on anyone, never asked for help. The idea of accepting such a massive amount of money, even from someone she loved, went against everything she'd taught herself. I need to think about this, she said finally. Dr. Harrison cleared his throat. I understand this is a difficult decision. Take some time. Discuss it together. But I should mention that Patricia's condition is deteriorating. If we're going to start this treatment, sooner is better than later. They left the doctor's office in tense silence. In the car, Andre tried to talk, but Brielle held up her hand. Please. I need quiet right now. I need to process. Okay, Andre said. But can we go to my place? Talk this through properly? Brielle nodded, not trusting herself to speak. At Andre's condo, she went straight to the windows and stared out at the city. She felt Andre come up behind her but didn't turn around. Talk to me, he said. Tell me what you're feeling. I'm feeling overwhelmed, Brielle said. I'm feeling like my life is spinning out of control. A month ago, I was alone and struggling, but I understood my situation. Now everything is different. You're back, we have money, there are options I never dreamed of. And it's wonderful, but it's also terrifying. Why terrifying? Because what if it goes away? Brielle turned to face him. What if I let myself depend on you and then something happens? What if you get sick again? What if you decide this is too much? What if you wake up one day and realize that taking care of me and my mother is more than you signed up for? Andre took her hands. That's not going to happen. You don't know that. 5 years ago, you thought we'd be together forever, and then life happened. Yes, life happened, Andre agreed. Terrible, unfair, manipulated life. But we survived it, Brielle. We survived being apart for 5 years. We survived Sterling's manipulation. We survived illness and loneliness and heartbreak. If we can survive all that, we can survive anything. But your money? Is just money, Andre finished. It's paper and numbers in an account. It has no value except what we give it. And I want to give it value by using it to help the woman I love and the woman who raised her. Please, Brielle. Please let me do this. Not because you owe me. Not because it creates some kind of debt. But because I love you and I have the resources to help, and refusing that help doesn't make you strong. It just makes Patricia suffer unnecessarily. Brielle felt tears streaming down her face. She knew he was right. She knew her pride was the only thing standing in the way of her mother getting the care she needed. But accepting felt like admitting defeat, like acknowledging that she couldn't take care of her own family. What if I can't pay you back? She asked in a small voice. There's nothing to pay back, Andre said. This isn't a loan. It's not transactional. It's love. It's me taking care of someone who matters to you, which means she matters to me. That's what families do. They help each other. We're not family yet. Aren't we? Andre asked. We're building a foundation together. We're making plans for the future. We're choosing each other every day. That sounds like family to me. Brielle looked at him through her tears and saw nothing but sincerity and love. This man who'd been through so much, who'd survived impossible circumstances, wanted to use his resources to help her mother. And she was letting her pride get in the way. Okay, she said finally. Okay, we'll do the treatment. But I have conditions. Name them. First, I want to be involved in every decision. I want to know what's being done, why, and what the expected outcomes are. My mother's care isn't something I'm handing off. Absolutely. Second, once the foundation is running and generating its own revenue, I want it to pay back what you spend on my mother's care. Put that money back into helping others. If that's what you want, Andre agreed. Though I still don't see this as money that needs to be repaid. Third, I'm getting a job. A real job that pays well. I'm not quitting the hospital until I have something else lined up, but I want to contribute financially. I want to be a partner, not a dependent. You are a partner, Andre said. You always have been. But if working makes you feel better, then work. Though I have a suggestion. What? Work for the foundation. As co-chair, you should be paid a salary. We'd budgeted for that anyway. You'd be perfect for the role. You know what it's like to need help. You understand the system. And you have the compassion and determination to make sure people get what they need. Brielle considered this. Working for the foundation would be meaningful. It would be using her experience to help others. And it would be a true partnership with Andre, building something together. What kind of salary? She asked. Andre pulled out his phone and showed her the budget the lawyers had created. The salary listed for the co-chairs made Brielle's eyes widen. That's more than I make in a year at the hospital. It's competitive for a position of this responsibility, Andre said. And it's what you deserve. You'd be making life-changing decisions for hundreds of people. That's worth compensating fairly. Brielle took a deep breath. Okay. Yes. I'll work for the foundation. I'll talk to the hospital about transitioning out over the next month. And the treatment for your mother? Yes, Brielle said, feeling the words settle into place. Yes, we'll do it. We'll start as soon as Dr. Harrison recommends. Andre pulled her into a hug and Brielle let herself relax into his arms. She'd spent so long fighting to stay independent, to prove she didn't need anyone. But maybe needing people wasn't weakness. Maybe accepting help wasn't failure. Maybe love meant letting someone else carry the weight sometimes. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for trusting me, Andre replied. They called Dr. Harrison that afternoon and told him to proceed with the treatment plan. They called Patricia and explained everything, reassuring her that the cost was covered, that she didn't need to worry. You're sure? Patricia asked, her voice shaking. This is a lot of money, baby. I don't want to be a burden. You could never be a burden, Mama, Brielle said. You're getting this treatment. We're going to help you get better. That's final. That night, after everything was arranged, Brielle and Andre sat on his couch, exhausted but relieved. I'm proud of you, Andre said. I know how hard that was, accepting help. I'm still not entirely comfortable with it, Brielle admitted. But I'm trying. I'm trying to let go of the idea that I have to do everything myself. You never had to do everything yourself, Andre said. You chose to. And I get why. After I left, you probably felt like you couldn't trust anyone else to be there for you. But I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere. You can lean on me. You can let me help. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Brielle kissed him, slow and deep, trying to convey everything she couldn't put into words. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, she rested her forehead against his. I love you, she said. Even when I'm scared. Even when I'm stubborn. I love you. I love you too, Andre said. Always. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped up in each other, while the city lights twinkled outside and the future stretched out before them, full of possibility and hope and second chances. Patricia's treatment started the following week, and the change was almost immediate. After just 2 infusions, her energy improved. She was sleeping better, eating more, laughing again in a way Brielle hadn't heard in years. I feel like myself, Patricia said one morning as Brielle helped her get dressed for a doctor's appointment. Like the person I was before this disease took over my life. Brielle hugged her mother, tears of joy streaming down her face. You look like yourself too, Mama. You have color in your cheeks again. Andre had been there for every appointment, taking notes, asking questions, making sure Patricia was comfortable. He'd arranged for a home health aide to come 3 times a week, giving Brielle more time to focus on the foundation. He'd had her apartment building install a wheelchair ramp, even though Patricia didn't need it yet, preparing for any future challenges. He's a good man, Patricia told Brielle one afternoon. Different from the boy you knew before, but better in some ways. More steady. More sure of himself. I know, Brielle said. I'm lucky to have him back. He's lucky to have you too, Patricia corrected. Don't forget that. This isn't just him saving you. You're saving him right back. The foundation officially launched on February 1st, and within hours they were flooded with applications. Stories poured in from across Chicago. A single father whose son needed cancer treatment he couldn't afford, a veteran dealing with PTSD who couldn't access proper mental health care, an elderly woman who had to choose between her heart medication and her rent. Brielle and Andre read every application together, usually late at night in Andre's home office. They cried over the stories, argued about which cases were most urgent, celebrated when they could approve funding that would genuinely change someone's life. This one, Brielle said one evening, holding up an application. Rebecca Johnson, 53 years old, diagnosed with breast cancer. She has insurance but the deductible is $15,000. She's a schoolteacher. She'll lose her house if she has to pay that out of pocket. Approved, Andre said immediately. Full amount, plus an extra $5,000 for living expenses while she's in treatment and can't work. They approved 12 applications that night, distributing nearly $200,000 in grants. It was exhausting and emotional and the most meaningful work Brielle had ever done. We're making a difference, she said as they finally shut down the computer at 2 a.m. We are, Andre agreed. And this is just the beginning. Wait until word really spreads. Wait until we partner with more hospitals, more clinics. We could help thousands of people. Brielle had officially quit her job at the hospital administration office, giving a month's notice that ended on February 15th. Her last day was bittersweet. She'd made friends there, had found purpose in helping patients navigate the complicated medical system. But she was moving on to something bigger now, something that would let her help even more people. Her co-workers threw her a small party, and several of them pulled her aside to ask about the foundation. I have a cousin who needs help, one woman said. Her husband has ALS. They're drowning in medical debt. Could she apply? Absolutely, Brielle said, giving her the website information. We review applications within 48 hours. If she qualifies, we can get her funding within a week. Word about the foundation spread through the hospital like wildfire. By the end of her last shift, Brielle had given out the website to at least 20 people. She left feeling like she was making the right choice, even if it was scary stepping away from the security of a steady paycheck. How do you feel? Andre asked that night over dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant. Terrified, Brielle admitted, but excited. For the first time in my life, I'm doing work that feels truly important. Not just important to me but important to the world. You were always important to the world, Andre said, reaching across the table to take her hand. You just couldn't see it. They'd settled into a rhythm now, spending most nights together but still maintaining separate homes. Brielle wasn't ready to officially move in with Andre, though she kept more and more of her things at his place. It felt safer this way, maintaining some independence while building their life together. In early March, the foundation received an application that stopped them both cold. It was from a young man named Tyler, 26 years old, diagnosed with the same rare blood disorder Andre had fought years ago. He'd been told he needed immediate treatment, but he had no insurance and no way to pay. This is me, Andre said, his voice shaking as he read the application. This could have been me if Sterling hadn't offered to help. Then we help him, Brielle said immediately. We cover everything. Treatment, medication, living expenses. Everything. That could run over $1 million, Andre said. I don't care. This is what the foundation is for. This is exactly the kind of situation we're meant to address. They approved Tyler's application that night, and 2 days later, he was starting treatment at the same hospital where Andre had been treated. Andre insisted on meeting him, on being there to offer support and understanding. You're going to get through this, Andre told Tyler in the hospital room before his first chemotherapy session. I know it's scary. I know you probably feel like you're going to die. But you won't. You're going to fight and you're going to win and you're going to have a whole life ahead of you. Tyler, pale and scared, looked at Andre with hope in his eyes. How do you know? Because I had the same disease. Same diagnosis, same prognosis. And I'm here healthy and thriving. You can do this. We're going to make sure you have everything you need to do this. Brielle watched from the doorway, her heart full. This was why they'd created the foundation. Not just to distribute money but to offer hope, to show people they weren't alone in their struggles. Over the next few weeks, Andre became a regular visitor to Tyler's hospital room. He'd bring books and movies, sit with Tyler through the hard treatments, talk him through the fear and pain. He was giving Tyler what he'd never had. Someone who understood, who'd been through it and survived. You're a good man, Brielle told him one night after a particularly difficult visit. Tyler had been so sick he could barely speak, but Andre had stayed anyway, just holding his hand and being present. "I'm trying to be," Andre said. "I'm trying to be the person I needed when I was sick. The friend, the support, the proof that life goes on after the nightmare." In mid-March, Patricia's doctor gave them incredible news. Her kidney function was improving. The treatment was working better than anyone had expected. She wasn't out of danger yet, but for the first time in years the trajectory was upward instead of downward. "This is a miracle," Dr. Harrison said, showing them the test results. "I've never seen someone respond this well to the treatment. If this continues, she might avoid dialysis entirely. She might have years, possibly decades, of good health ahead of her." Brielle and Andre celebrated that night with Patricia, the three of them sharing a fancy dinner that Andre had catered to Brielle's apartment. Patricia wore a bright red dress she'd bought for the occasion, and she looked healthier than she had in years. "I want to toast," Patricia said, raising her glass of sparkling cider. "To second chances. To love that survives impossible circumstances. To my daughter who never gave up on me. And to Andre who came back when we needed him most. I'm grateful for this life, for this family, for every day I get to spend with you both." They clinked glasses, and Brielle felt happiness wash over her so intensely it almost hurt. This was what she'd been missing for 5 years. Not just Andre, though his presence was crucial. But this feeling of family, of belonging, of being part of something bigger than herself. "I want to toast too," Andre said, setting down his glass and reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small blue velvet box and Brielle's heart stopped. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Andre smiled, nervous and hopeful. "Something I should have done years ago." He got down on one knee beside her chair, and Patricia let out a small gasp of delight. "Brielle Washington," Andre said, opening the box to reveal a beautiful ring with a simple diamond. "I've loved you since the moment I met you. I loved you when we had nothing. I loved you when I was sick and alone in California. I loved you during the 5 years we were apart. And I love you now more than ever. You are my home, my partner, my future. Will you marry me?" Brielle looked at the ring, at Andre's face, at her mother beaming with joy. She thought about the journey they'd been on, the pain they'd survived, the love they'd rebuilt from ashes. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I'll marry you." Andre slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her while Patricia applauded and wiped away her own tears. "It's about time," Patricia said, laughing through her crying. "I was starting to think I'd have to propose for you." They spent the rest of the evening making plans. Nothing elaborate, they agreed. Just something small and meaningful, probably in the summer when Patricia would be even stronger. "I want to get married in the park," Brielle said. "Where we went on Christmas morning. Where you kissed me and it felt like we were starting over." "Then that's where we'll get married," Andre agreed. That night, after Andre had left and Patricia had gone to bed, Brielle sat alone in the living room, looking at her engagement ring and thinking about how much her life had changed in just 3 months. She'd gone from hopeless and alone to engaged and purposeful. She'd gone from barely surviving to building something meaningful. She'd gone from thinking love was a weakness to understanding it was the greatest strength of all. Her phone buzzed with a text from Andre. "I'm the luckiest man alive. Can't wait to spend forever with you." Brielle smiled and texted back, "Forever isn't long enough." And she meant it. After everything they'd been through, after all the years of separation and pain, forever with Andre sounded absolutely perfect. Summer came to Chicago in a burst of green and gold, and with it came wedding preparations. Brielle and Andre planned a small ceremony for July, wanting something intimate and meaningful rather than a huge production. "Just family and close friends," Brielle insisted. "I want people there who actually care about us, not some big society event." "Whatever you want," Andre agreed. "As long as I get to marry you, nothing else matters." The foundation was thriving beyond their wildest expectations. They'd helped over 300 families in 6 months, distributing nearly $8 million in grants. They'd hired a small staff to handle applications and coordinate with hospitals. They'd formed partnerships with medical centers across Chicago and were planning to expand to other cities. Tyler, the young man with the blood disorder, had completed his treatment and was in remission. He'd started working for the foundation as an outreach coordinator, visiting hospitals and talking to patients about resources available to them. His story gave hope to everyone who heard it. "You saved my life," Tyler told Andre and Brielle at a foundation event in May. "Not just with the money but with the support. You showed me I wasn't alone. That's worth more than anything." Patricia's health continued to improve dramatically. By June, her doctors were calling her their miracle patient. She'd started volunteering at a senior center, teaching art classes and mentoring other people dealing with chronic illnesses. "I spent so long being sick," she told Brielle one afternoon. "Now I want to spend whatever time I have left being useful. Helping other people understand that illness doesn't define you." The wedding day arrived with perfect summer weather. They'd chosen Millennium Park's Lurie Garden, a beautiful green space in the heart of the city. 50 guests filled the chairs they'd set up, everyone dressed in bright summer colors. Brielle wore a simple white dress with blue flowers embroidered on the bodice, the blue matching André's suit. She carried a bouquet of wildflowers that Patricia had helped her pick that morning. She'd never felt more beautiful. "You ready for this?" Patricia asked, appearing beside her as guests took their seats. "So ready," Brielle said. "This feels right, Mama. Like everything that happened before was leading us here." "Maybe it was," Patricia said. "Maybe you both needed to grow separately before you could grow together. You're not the same people you were 5 years ago. You're stronger, wiser, more sure of what you want." Music began to play, a string quartet André had hired. Patricia walked down the aisle first, beaming with pride and health. Then it was Brielle's turn, walking alone because that's how she wanted it. She was choosing this on her own as an independent woman, not being given away like property. André stood at the front under an arch covered in flowers, and the look on his face when he saw her took Brielle's breath away. Pure love, pure joy, pure certainty. The ceremony was short and sweet. They'd written their own vows, personal promises that meant more than any traditional words. "Brielle," André said, holding both her hands, "I vow to never leave you again. I vow to be honest even when the truth is hard. I vow to support your dreams and celebrate your victories. I vow to stand beside you in sickness and health, in poverty and wealth, in joy and sorrow. You are my heart, my home, my forever. I choose you today and every day for the rest of my life." Brielle's voice shook as she spoke her own vows. "André, I vow to trust you even when fear tells me to guard my heart. I vow to build our future together as equal partners. I vow to love you through the easy times and the hard times, through the expected and the unexpected. You are my second chance, my proof that love survives anything. I choose you today and every day forever." They exchanged rings, simple gold bands that represented their commitment. When the officiant pronounced them married, André kissed Brielle like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. The reception was held in a nearby restaurant, nothing fancy but filled with warmth and laughter. Speeches were made, toasts were given, and Brielle felt surrounded by love in a way she'd never experienced before. To Brielle and André, Tasha said, standing to give the maid of honor speech, "I take full credit for bringing you back together, by the way. That blind date was my idea and look how well it turned out. Seriously though, watching you two find your way back to each other has been beautiful. You've shown all of us that real love doesn't give up, even when circumstances try to tear it apart. Congratulations. I love you both." Tyler stood next, representing the foundation families. "Mr. Mitchell and Mrs. Mitchell," he said, causing Brielle to tear up at hearing her new name. "You saved my life, but more than that, you gave me hope. The foundation you built is changing the world, one family at a time. And your love story reminds all of us that second chances are real. Thank you for everything." When the speeches ended and dancing began, André pulled Brielle onto the floor for their first dance as husband and wife. "How does it feel?" he asked as they swayed to the music. "Perfect," Brielle said. "Absolutely perfect. A year ago, I never would have believed this was possible. I was so alone, so convinced I'd never be happy again. And now I have everything. You, my mother's health, meaningful work, a future full of possibility. I'm the luckiest woman alive." "I'm the lucky one," André insisted. "You gave me a second chance when you had every right to say no. You trusted me when I hadn't earned that trust. You let me back into your life and your heart. That's a gift I'll never take for granted." They danced until the sun set, until the summer stars came out over Chicago. They celebrated with friends and family, cut their cake, tossed the bouquet. And through it all, Brielle felt a happiness so deep and complete that it brought tears to her eyes. As the evening wound down, André took Brielle's hand and led her away from the party, back to the spot in Millennium Park where he'd first kissed her on Christmas morning. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a wrapped box from his jacket pocket. "You've already given me everything," Brielle said. "Not everything. Open it." Inside the box was a set of professional paintbrushes and a gift certificate to an art supply store for $1,000. "I know you stopped painting," André said softly, "but I hope you'll start again. You have so much beauty inside you, Brielle. So much talent. The world deserves to see what you create. Brielle held the brushes, feeling their weight in her hands. She hadn't picked up a paintbrush in 5 years, had convinced herself that part of her life was over. What would I even paint? She asked. Whatever speaks to you. Maybe our story. Maybe the people we've helped through the foundation. Maybe just colors and light and feeling. It doesn't matter what. Just that you're creating again. Brielle kissed him, deep and grateful. Thank you. For believing in me. For seeing me as more than I see myself. That's what love does, Andre said. It shows us who we really are. They stood there as the summer night deepened, holding each other and looking out at the city that had witnessed their pain and their healing. I have a wedding gift for you too, Brielle said. Or maybe it's a gift for both of us. What is it? I'm moving in with you. Officially. No more splitting time between apartments. Patricia's health is good enough that she can live independently now with the home health aide's help. It's time for us to really start our life together. Andre's face lit up. Are you sure? I don't want to rush you. I'm sure. We've waited long enough, don't you think? 5 years apart, then nearly a year of dating. I'm ready to be your wife in every way. To share a home, to wake up together every morning, to build our future in the same space. That's the best wedding gift you could have given me, Andre said, spinning her around in joy. As autumn arrived, Brielle moved her things into Andre's condo, making it truly theirs. She set up a studio in the spare bedroom and started painting again, hesitant at first but growing more confident with each piece. Her paintings were different from before, darker and richer, showing the depth of emotion she'd experienced over the past years. The foundation announced plans to expand nationally, opening chapters in 10 major cities. They'd secured additional funding from other donors inspired by their work. They'd helped over 1,000 families now, changing lives every single day. Patricia remained healthy and active, traveling to visit old friends and making up for the years she'd spent too sick to enjoy life. She'd moved into a beautiful senior living community that offered independence with access to medical care if needed, paid for by Andre despite Patricia's protests. Your family now, Andre had told her. And families take care of each other. Tyler completed his training as an outreach coordinator and was promoted to director of patient services, becoming the face of the foundation for many people who needed help. And Brielle and Andre settled into married life, learning each other all over again while building something beautiful together. Christmas Eve arrived again, marking 1 full year since their blind date reunion. Do you realize it's been exactly a year? Brielle asked that morning as they decorated their tree together. How could I forget? Andre said. Best Christmas Eve of my life, even though we both spent most of it crying. We've come so far, Brielle said, looking around their home. Her paintings hung on the walls alongside the original sunset piece she'd made him 7 years ago. Photos from their wedding sat on every surface. The space felt warm and lived in and loved. We have, Andre agreed. And we're going to keep going. Building, growing, helping others. Together. That evening they hosted a Christmas party at their home. Patricia came healthy and glowing in a bright green dress. Tyler brought his girlfriend, a nurse he'd met during his treatment. The foundation staff came along with several families they'd helped. The condo was filled with laughter and joy and the sound of people who'd survived difficult times celebrating the good ones. As midnight approached, Andre pulled Brielle out onto the balcony away from the party. I have something to tell you, he said. What? Brielle asked, suddenly nervous. I've been thinking about everything we've been through. The separation, the manipulation, the pain and the healing. And I realized something important. What's that? I wouldn't change any of it, Andre said. I know that sounds crazy. But if things had been different, if I'd never gotten sick, if Sterling had never interfered, we might not have appreciated what we have now. We might have taken each other for granted. But because we lost each other and found each other again, we know exactly how precious this is. We know what it's like to live without it. So we'll never take it for granted. Brielle thought about this and realized he was right. The pain had made them stronger. The separation had taught them the value of what they had. The struggle had prepared them to build something meaningful together. I wouldn't change it either, she agreed. Even though it hurt. Even though there were times I thought I'd never survive. Because it led us here. To this moment, this life, this love. Andre kissed her as fireworks began exploding over the city. Another year ending, another beginning. But this time they were together. This time they had everything they needed. When they pulled apart, Brielle smiled up at her husband. Merry Christmas, Andre. Merry Christmas, Brielle. Here's to many more. Together. Together, she echoed. Always together. And as they stood on the balcony wrapped in each other's arms with their friends and family celebrating inside and the city sparkling with Christmas lights below, Brielle felt complete. She'd agreed to a blind date to avoid spending Christmas alone. And that simple decision had brought her everything she'd ever wanted. Love, family, purpose, hope. A second chance she never thought she'd get. A Christmas miracle that lasted a lifetime.